At my aunt's hotel opening in Bangkok, the ribbon-cutting scissors were handed to every investor, except me. "Don't worry," my cousin said. "You're practically family." I laughed. So did the staff, after texts about their new contracts. I had bought out suppliers, catering, and the land lease. Panic spread. Investors huddled around my aunt. I sipped my champagne. "Practically? No, darling. Legally." I touched the jade pendant hanging at my throat, my grandmother's last gift before she passed. "For luck," she'd said. I never needed it more than today. The Grand Bangkok Hotel was everything Aunt Lauren had promised, a gleaming testament to luxury rising above the Chao Phraya River. Marble floors reflected crystal chandeliers, and the scent of exotic flowers filled the air. I smoothed down my silk dress, purchased specifically for this moment, and took a deep breath. 4 years ago, when Lauren was desperate and drowning in debt after her divorce, I'd written that check for $250,000, nearly my entire inheritance from Grandma. "We'll be partners," she'd promised. "This is just the beginning." Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank each of you for being part of this incredible journey. If you're enjoying these stories of family business dynamics and calculated comebacks, consider subscribing. It's completely free and helps us share more tales of brilliant strategic victories like Brittany's. Let's dive into how one overlooked investor turned the tables on the aunt who betrayed her. Now I watched as Lauren, radiant in designer white, glided through the crowd of Thailand's elite. Her hair was perfectly coiffed, her smile dazzling as she greeted government ministers and international investors. "Brittany," she called, spotting me. Her embrace was warm but brief. "Don't you look lovely? Enjoy yourself. This is quite a moment." "It certainly is," I agreed, feeling a flutter of anticipation. The official ribbon-cutting ceremony would begin soon, and I'd rehearsed my brief thank you speech a dozen times on the flight from Singapore. A server appeared with champagne. I took a flute, scanning the room. The investors were gathering near the main entrance, where a red ribbon stretched across the grand doorway. Lauren was moving among them, handing out something. My heart quickened as I realized what was happening. In Thai tradition, having multiple people cut a ribbon simultaneously symbolized shared success. Lauren was distributing ceremonial scissors, beautiful silver ones with ribbons tied to the handles. I moved closer, expecting my turn. Mr. Tanaka from the Japanese investment group received his with a bow. The representative from the European hotel chain got hers with air kisses. Even the minor investors, people who'd come in last year with small contributions, were being handed their symbolic scissors. Then Lauren turned away. The distribution was complete. I stood frozen, champagne halfway to my lips. Had she somehow missed me? I scanned the group. Everyone who mattered held scissors, except me. "Ladies and gentlemen," Lauren's voice rang out. "Please take your positions for the ceremonial cutting." I approached quickly. "Lauren," I said quietly, "I think you forgot me." Her eyes met mine and something flickered there. Not surprise, but something calculated. "Oh, Brittany. This is for investors." "I am an investor," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the heat rising to my face. "The first investor." Lauren's smile didn't waver. "This is for current stakeholders, dear. Don't worry about it." Before I could respond, she was gliding away, positioning herself center stage. The cameras flashed as the group raised their scissors simultaneously, cutting the ribbon to thunderous applause. I stepped back, stunned. My champagne now tasted bitter. I'd been deliberately excluded, publicly sidelined from the moment that would appear in every business publication tomorrow. First time in Bangkok? I turned to find an elderly Thai man in an impeccable suit watching me with kind eyes. "No," I replied. "But it's been years. I used to visit when my aunt and I were establishing her first property." His eyebrows rose. "You helped with the Chiang Mai guest house?" I was under the impression Ms. Lauren built that herself after her divorce. "That's not exactly what happened," I said carefully. He introduced himself as Kun Prasert, the hotel's head concierge, recruited from one of Bangkok's oldest luxury establishments. As traditional dancers began performing in the center of the lobby, he shared stories about working with Lauren over the past year. "Ms. Lauren is very particular," he said diplomatically. His eyes darted to where she stood entertaining guests, then back to me. His expression changed subtly when she wasn't looking, a tightness around his mouth that spoke volumes. I noticed other staff members doing the same, smiling brightly when Lauren glanced their way, expressions falling when her attention moved elsewhere. The pattern was unmistakable once he noticed it. "The hotel is beautiful," I offered. "Yes," he agreed, though some of us were surprised by the changes to the original plans. Changes. The community spaces that were promised. The training program for local youth. They were removed from the final design. He hesitated. Much like the story of Chiang Mai seems to have been revised. Over the next hour, as I mingled through the party, I sought out the older staff members. Each conversation revealed another piece of a disturbing pattern. My aunt had systematically rewritten history, our history. According to hotel lore, Lauren had single-handedly conceptualized, funded, and built her first successful property. There was no mention of how we'd spent nights planning at my kitchen table, how I'd handled the financing and regulatory issues while she focused on design, how we'd celebrated together when the first guests arrived. Near the koi pond in the courtyard, I finally cornered Lauren alone. "Why did you exclude me from the ribbon cutting?" I asked directly. Lauren's diamond bracelets clinked as she waved her hand dismissively. "Don't be dramatic, Brittany. This is business, not personal." "Business? I invested $250,000 in you when no one else would. And that money is being returned to you. The paperwork's already been filed, dear. Your original investment amount will be transferred back, nothing more. That's business." Her tone was smooth, practiced. "That wasn't our agreement," I said, struggling to keep my voice even. "We were supposed to be partners. Were we? I don't recall signing anything to that effect." Her smile was glacial. "You should be happy, this hotel is worth millions now. I could have offered you much less." Before I could respond, she was called away by an investor, leaving me standing alone by the rippling water. I watched the koi fish circle endlessly, their orange and white bodies gliding beneath the surface. Just like Lauren. Beautiful on the surface, cold-blooded underneath. She does that to everyone, you know. I turned to find Lauren's daughter, my cousin Melissa, watching me from the shadow of a decorative bamboo grove. We'd been close once before Lauren's divorce changed everything. "Does what?" I asked, though I already knew. "Uses people until they're not useful anymore," Melissa said, stepping onto the moonlit terrace beside me. "You're not the first." "What do you mean?" Melissa sighed, leaning against the railing. "Remember Uncle Jack? Mom's brother-in-law from her first marriage." I nodded. Jack had owned a small but successful restaurant chain. He gave Mom her first job when she moved to Thailand. Taught her everything about the hospitality business. Then once she learned enough, she somehow ended up with controlling interest in his company. He's running a food cart in Phuket now. That's... I couldn't find the words. There've been others. Business partners who suddenly find themselves pushed out just when things get profitable. Melissa looked at me with genuine concern. "Mom does this to everyone who helps her climb. She's ruthless." I felt something harden inside me as Melissa added the final insult. "But don't worry. You're practically family, so maybe she'll be kinder." Practically family. Not actually family despite the blood we shared. Just close enough to be used more thoroughly than the others. I watched Lauren across the room, laughing with people who had no idea what she was capable of. In that moment, something changed inside me. The hurt transformed into resolve. "Thank you for the warning," I told Melissa, my voice steady now. "It's good to know what I'm dealing with." As the party continued around me, I sipped my champagne slowly, my mind suddenly clear. Lauren had taught me a valuable lesson tonight. One she would soon regret. Family or not, some betrayals demand a response. And I had just the right one in mind. The 14-hour flight from Bangkok to Singapore gave me plenty of time to think. By the time I unlocked the door to my apartment, my humiliation had hardened into determination. I dropped my suitcase in the entryway and headed straight to my spare bedroom. This room, usually reserved for occasional guests, was about to serve a very different purpose. I dragged the guest bed against one wall and moved in my desk. By midnight, I had ordered a large whiteboard, 2 cork bulletin boards, and a digital projector. Amazon would deliver everything by noon tomorrow. I opened my laptop and began what would become the most thorough investigation of my career. As a finance executive at Capital Venture Partners, I had access to resources most people didn't. I started by pulling Lauren's hotel company's public records. The business structure was complex, deliberately so I suspected. Lauren had created a web of holding companies and subsidiaries that obscured the true ownership and financial obligations. But untangling complex financial structures was literally my day job. 3 days later, my spare bedroom had transformed. The walls were covered with printouts, property records, supply chain maps, and financial projections. Red string connected key points like something from a detective movie. I'd taken a week of personal leave, telling my boss I needed time for family matters. Technically, that wasn't a lie. A knock at my door interrupted my analysis of the hotel's cash flow statements. "You look terrible," said Ming, my colleague from work's Asia-Pacific division, carrying takeout bags that smelled like heaven. "When's the last time you ate something that didn't come from your coffee machine?" I couldn't remember. Ming set down cartons of noodles and dumplings on the one clear corner of my desk. "So this is your family emergency?" he asked, surveying my war room. "Looks more like you're planning a corporate raid." "Something like that," I admitted, reaching for the noodles. "My aunt screwed me over." Between bites, I explained what had happened in Bangkok. Ming listened carefully, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Unlike most of my colleagues who viewed Southeast Asia as one homogeneous market, Ming had spent years working throughout the region. "The land," he said suddenly, pointing to a document I'd pinned up. "That's your leverage point." "What do you mean?" "Most foreign businesses in Thailand don't own their land outright. They lease it long-term. Have you checked who owns the land under your aunt's hotel?" I hadn't. Within hours, we discovered the property sat on land owned by a Mr. Anand Sivanazarn, a respected local businessman whose family had owned the riverside plot for generations. More importantly, the lease was set to expire in just 3 months. "This is it," I said, circling the lease expiration date. "This is my way in." Over the next week, Ming became my unofficial cultural advisor. Between our regular work hours, he taught me crucial Thai business protocols, the importance of kreng jai, consideration for others' feelings, the proper way to show respect to elders, how to navigate the complex social hierarchies. "Business in Thailand isn't just about the best numbers," Ming explained as we practiced proper Y greetings in my living room. "It's about relationships, respect, and saving face. Your aunt may have the better financial offer, but if she's violated cultural norms, then I have an opening," I finished. I booked a flight back to Bangkok for the following week. Before leaving, I incorporated a new company, Phoenix Hospitality Holdings, and transferred a significant portion of my savings into its accounts. This wasn't just about revenge. It was a business move that needed proper capitalization. Mr. Anand agreed to meet me at his home rather than his office, a promising sign Ming had assured me. The traditional teak house sat in a lush garden compound, an oasis of calm in bustling Bangkok. I arrived with a carefully selected gift, a rare tea from Singapore, presented with both hands and a proper Y. "Miss Brittany," Mr. Anand greeted me, his eyes curious but warm. "I was intrigued by your request. Please join me for tea." We sat in his garden pavilion, where a servant brought out the jasmine tea in delicate cups. I waited until we had exchanged pleasantries about my flight and the weather before gently steering the conversation. "I understand my aunt's lease on your property expires soon," I said. "I hope the arrangement has been satisfactory." His smile remained, but something flickered in his eyes. "The financial terms have been acceptable." I noted his careful wording. "Only the financial terms?" Mr. Anand set down his teacup. "Your aunt is a shrewd businesswoman. The hotel is beautiful, profitable. But..." He hesitated. "But not everything can be measured in profit margins," I suggested. "Precisely." He seemed relieved at my understanding. "When we signed the original agreement, there were certain commitments. A training program for local youth. Community access to certain facilities. Preference for local suppliers. Respect for our traditions. None of which materialized, I guessed. The spirits of our ancestors remain in that land," he said quietly. "I had hoped for a business that honored them." I took a chance. "What if I told you I could deliver on those promises? A scholarship dinner for hospitality students. Contracts with local suppliers. Community spaces as originally planned." His eyebrows rose. And you would be able to do this how, exactly? I spent the next hour outlining my vision, not just for wresting control from Lauren but for creating something better. By the time I left, we had the framework of an agreement. He wouldn't renew Lauren's lease. Instead, he would transfer it to Phoenix Hospitality, with specific performance clauses ensuring I kept my promises. The supply chain proved even easier to infiltrate than I'd anticipated. Under the guise of researching my own boutique hotel venture, I met with Lauren's suppliers one by one. The Organic Produce Cooperative had been waiting 90 days for payment. The custom furniture maker had seen his beautiful designs cheapened by last-minute material substitutions. The laundry service was processing double the contracted volume without compensation. She threatens to replace us if we complain, the furniture maker told me in his dusty workshop. Where else can we sell custom pieces already in production? I offered fair terms, prompt payment, and proper credit for their craftsmanship. By week's end, I had preliminary agreements with 12 key suppliers. The legal framework came together in a sleek office overlooking Lumpini Park. Kun Supachai, a Harvard-educated attorney specializing in hospitality law, reviewed my growing portfolio of agreements. Your approach is unorthodox but entirely legal, he confirmed, adjusting his glasses. The land lease transfer provides your foundation. The supplier agreements create your walls. And the staff relationships. He smiled. They will be your roof. We identified 3 primary leverage points: the land lease, the supplier network, and the hotel staff, whom Lauren had alienated through imperious management and broken promises. Each alone might not be enough, but together they created an impregnable position. The final piece fell into place unexpectedly. While establishing the digital infrastructure for Phoenix Hospitality, I discovered Lauren had been cutting corners on contract management. Her digital signature system hadn't been properly updated, leaving her agreements vulnerable to verification challenges. Not enough to invalidate them entirely, but enough to create uncertainty and delays, critical weaknesses in the time-sensitive hospitality industry. I documented everything meticulously, ensuring my own documents were pristine while cataloging her vulnerabilities. As I finalized the paperwork for my new holding company, an invitation arrived: Lauren's official grand opening gala, a more public affair following the investors-only event. Perfect timing. I confirmed my attendance with a brief, pleasant note. Let Lauren think I'd accepted my dismissal with good grace. The reality would be much different. As I packed for Bangkok once more, I touched my grandmother's jade pendant. For luck, I whispered, though I was relying on much more than luck now. I was bringing strategy, legitimacy, and the power of being underestimated. Lauren had taught me a valuable lesson about family and business. Now it was time to show her exactly how well I'd learned it. My car pulled up to the Grand Bangkok Hotel's entrance just as the evening sky deepened to indigo. Unlike the investors' preview, tonight's gala welcomed Bangkok society, government officials, and international press. I smoothed the folds of my traditional Thai silk dress, a rich sapphire blue with gold thread embroidery, and took a steadying breath. The dress had been a careful choice. Ming had connected me with a renowned Thai designer who created a modern interpretation of traditional silk patterns. It respected local aesthetics while remaining elegant enough for an international luxury setting. My grandmother's jade pendant completed the look, both a talisman and a statement. As I stepped onto the red carpet, cameras flashed. I wasn't a celebrity, but the dress caught attention. Inside the lobby, transformed now with floating flower arrangements and glittering lights, I noticed the immediate reactions. Several Thai officials nodded approvingly. A group of local businesswomen smiled in recognition of the cultural homage. Lauren stood near the grand staircase in a Valentino gown that probably cost more than most staff members' annual salary. Her expression flickered when she saw me, surprise then swift calculation. Brittany, what a lovely costume. Her air kiss didn't quite reach my cheek. It's hand-woven Thai silk, I replied pleasantly. The design honors the Chukri dynasty. A senior government official nearby overheard and turned. Indeed it does. A thoughtful choice, Miss Brittany Chin. I'm Lauren's niece. We chatted briefly about the silk industry's importance to Thailand's heritage. When I glanced back, Lauren had already moved on to greet more prominent guests. Perfect. I circulated through the crowd, stopping to admire a display of traditional Thai instruments. The musician smiled and played a few notes. "Miss Chin." A voice at my elbow. "Your champagne." It was Chef Niren, whom I'd met during my previous visit. According to my research, his original menu featuring elevated Thai cuisine had been largely scrapped in favor of international standards. "Thank you, chef. I've been looking forward to trying your food tonight." His eyes brightened. "You may notice a few special dishes. Not on the original menu, but I took the liberty." He glanced toward Lauren, then back to me. "Sometimes traditions deserve their place at the table, yes." "Absolutely. I can't wait." Throughout the evening, similar encounters followed. The head of housekeeping, Kun Malai, brushed past me with a discreet envelope. "Updated staff roster and contact information," she whispered. "As requested." The maintenance manager caught my eye from across the room and gave a subtle thumbs up. The land transfer documents had been properly filed. My phone vibrated with a text from my operations manager, Raj. "All systems ready. Awaiting your command." I slipped the phone back into my clutch. Everything was in place. The gala reached its crescendo as Lauren ascended the small stage. Spotlights found her and the room quieted. She was in her element, poised, confident, commanding attention. "Distinguished guests, valued partners and friends," she began. "Tonight we celebrate not just a hotel opening, but a vision brought to life through perseverance and commitment." I sipped my champagne watching her performance. She was good. Her voice modulating perfectly between humble and proud, her gestures elegant but not theatrical. "Success in hospitality is built on relationships and trust," she continued. "On honoring commitments and maintaining the values that family instills in us from childhood." I nearly choked on my champagne. Across the room I caught Melissa's eye. My cousin raised an eyebrow, acknowledging the hypocrisy. "That's why I'm thrilled to announce the next phase of our journey together." Lauren's voice rose with excitement. "The Grand Bangkok is just the beginning. Tonight I can reveal our 5-year expansion plan. 3 new properties across Thailand, beginning with a beachfront resort in Phuket breaking ground next month." Murmurs of approval rippled through the investors. But I noticed Mr. Anand's face tightening. This aggressive expansion wasn't part of their understanding, and it would further strain local resources and communities. Our eyes met across the room. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. It was time. While Lauren detailed profit projections and growth metrics, I unlocked my phone and typed a simple message to Raj. "Execute Phoenix Protocol." I watched Lauren counting silently. 3, 1. The first phone buzzed somewhere in the crowd. Then another. And another. Staff members discreetly checking messages. Board members frowning at their screens. Supplier representatives straightening in surprise. Lauren faltered mid-sentence as the wave of whispers began. Her eyes darted around the room, trying to identify the disturbance. "As I was saying," she continued, voice slightly higher, "our projections show a 30% return on." More phones. More murmurs. A board member stood abruptly and exited the room, phone pressed to his ear. The head chef appeared at my side, eyes wide. "Is it true? New contracts with fair hours and cultural holiday allowances." I nodded. "Effective immediately." His face broke into a smile before he composed himself and returned to his professional demeanor. But word spread quickly among the staff. Lauren was losing her audience. The whispers grew louder. An investor approached the stage, urgently gesturing for her attention. "Please everyone," she said, her smile now strained. "If we could just..." Her phone rang. She wouldn't normally answer during a speech, but something in her expression told me she recognized the caller as too important to ignore. She glanced at the screen, then back at the crowd. "A brief pause, please. Enjoy the music." As she stepped away to take the call, chaos erupted in pockets around the room. Investors huddled in urgent discussion. Staff members exchanged disbelieving looks. Supplier representatives who'd been invited as a courtesy were suddenly the center of attention. I remained still, a calm center in the storm I'd created. My champagne glass was nearly empty when Lauren returned to the stage. Her face had lost its polished glow, replaced by something harder and more desperate. "It seems," she said into the microphone, her voice tight, "that there's been some confusion about certain business arrangements." The room quieted, sensing drama. I assure you everything is under control, she continued. We'll sort out these miscommunications privately. Please continue enjoying the evening. But it was too late. An investor approached me directly. Is it true? He demanded. You've acquired the land lease? Lauren's eyes found me across the room. For a moment I saw genuine shock in them. Then her face hardened as she stepped off the stage and cut through the crowd toward me. What have you done? She hissed when she reached me, maintaining her public smile through gritted teeth. With perfect timing, Mr. Anand appeared at my side. Ms. Chin and I have come to an arrangement that better serves the community's interests, he said calmly. The land lease transfer is already filed. Lauren's face paled. That's impossible. We have a contract. Which expires in 3 months, I reminded her. Business is business, isn't that right, Aunt Lauren? The investors gathered around us now, demanding explanations about supplier contracts and operational changes. Lauren's composure was cracking visibly. You can't do this, she said loud enough for others to hear. We're family. I raised my glass in a toast, the jade pendant cool against my skin. Practically family? No, darling. Legally. I took a deliberate sip. I own the land your hotel sits on. I control your supply chain. And I have the staff's loyalty. Now shall we discuss terms? The room fell silent before erupting in a buzz of shocked conversations. Lauren's face cycled through disbelief, rage, and finally, most satisfyingly, fear. Checkmate. The boardroom. 20 minutes. The senior investor from Dubai didn't wait for Lauren's response before turning on his heel. The elegant gala disintegrated rapidly, guests filtering out while staff hovered uncertainly. Lauren managed to maintain a brittle smile as she spoke urgently with her closest allies, but I could see panic in her eyes. Mr. Tanaka would like you to join the meeting as well, said a young assistant, approaching me with nervous deference. Japanese investor Mr. Tanaka was the second largest stakeholder in the hotel. His support would be crucial for either of us. The hotel's boardroom occupied the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Bangkok's glittering nightscape. By the time I arrived, carrying my leather portfolio containing all the documentation, the room was charged with tension. 8 investors sat around the gleaming table with Lauren at the far end, her perfect makeup now slightly smudged from stress. A chair had been left empty directly opposite her. A power play in seating arrangements, forcing us to face each other like opponents. I took it without hesitation. It's nearly midnight, said Mr. Tanaka, checking his watch. But I believe we need clarity before markets open tomorrow. For the next 2 hours, I methodically presented my case. The land lease transfer, supplier contracts, staff agreements. My documentation was impeccable, every move legally sound. Lauren interrupted frequently at first, her composure cracking. This is corporate sabotage, she snapped when I explained how I'd secured the land lease. No, I corrected calmly. It's business. Mr. Anand was under no obligation to renew your lease. He chose a better partner. Her tactics shifted as the night wore on and investors' expressions turned from shock to calculation. By 2 a.m. she had moved from outright denial to desperate bargaining. Brittany, please. Her voice softened, eyes suddenly glistening with tears. We can work together. I never meant to hurt you. You're my sister's child. The Saudi investor who had initially seemed most hostile to me raised an eyebrow at this performance. Lauren had clearly used the family card with him previously, perhaps explaining why he'd invested. You bought out my investment at its original value, I replied evenly. You excluded me from recognition. You told me, and I quote, that's business. I'm simply following your example. The room fell silent. It appears, Mr. Tanaka said finally, that we have a significant change in circumstance. Ms. Chin now controls critical components of this operation. The question is, what happens next? By sunrise, the boardroom had emptied except for 3 of us. Myself, Lauren, and Mr. Wong, a veteran hotel investor from Hong Kong who had requested a private word. He was in his 70s with shrewd eyes that had seen decades of business deals. I've known your aunt for 15 years, he told me, Lauren still within earshot. We partnered on the Macau Royale project in 2010. He glanced at Lauren. A venture that mysteriously restructured just as it became profitable, leaving me with significantly diminished returns. Lauren's face remained impassive, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped her empty coffee cup. I stayed quiet then, Mr. Wong continued. But I watch. I learn. Your business model. He tapped my proposal, emphasizes community integration, staff development, sustainable practices. This is the future of luxury hospitality. He stood, buttoning his impeccable suit jacket. You have my support, Ms. Chen. Sometimes business requires correction. With a slight bow, he left us alone. Lauren and I sat in silence as dawn broke over Bangkok. The city awakened beneath us, street vendors setting up, monks in saffron robes collecting alms, the first water taxis plying the river. I've scheduled a staff breakfast at 7, I said finally. You're welcome to join. She didn't answer and I left her sitting there, staring out at the city that was supposed to be the crown jewel of her empire. The hotel kitchen buzzed with activity when I arrived. Chef Niren looked surprised when I asked for an apron. You want to serve? He asked. I do. The staff breakfast wasn't typically an elegant affair. Usually just coffee and quick bites before the day began. But today the chef had prepared traditional Thai morning dishes alongside Western options. The message was clear. Both traditions had value here. As staff filtered in, surprise registered on their faces seeing me serving alongside the kitchen team. Many approached cautiously, unsure of the power dynamics after last night's revelation. Is it true? Asked a young waitress named Dao. About the new contracts? Yes, I confirmed, serving her coconut rice. Guaranteed time off for important Buddhist holidays. Health benefits extended to family members. Educational stipends. Word spread quickly. The housekeeping staff entered as a group led by Kunmalai. The maintenance crew arrived next, followed by front desk personnel and concierge staff. I set down my serving spoon and addressed them all. I know change brings uncertainty. But I promise you this. Your expertise and dedication will be valued here. Your culture will be respected. Your concerns will be heard. I outlined specific improvements already in motion. The scholarship program for staff family members, the partnership with local universities, the sustainable supply chain initiatives that would benefit Thai producers. Ms. Lauren was not very interested in our ideas, ventured the head bartender. Will this be different? Try me, I challenged with a smile. I'm listening. For the next hour, ideas poured forth. Many insightful, some impractical, all offered with increasing enthusiasm. By the time they dispersed to prepare for the day's guests, something had shifted. The wariness remained. They had been disappointed before, but alongside it grew a tentative hope. That afternoon, I knocked on Lauren's penthouse door. I half expected her to refuse to see me, but the door opened immediately. She had changed from her gala gown into silk loungewear, her makeup removed, hair pulled back. She looked both older and more human. Her suite was immaculate except for the bar cart, where a half-empty glass of scotch sat despite the early hour. Come to gloat? She asked, but the venom had drained from her voice, leaving only exhaustion. No. To talk. I declined the drink she offered and sat in one of the modern armchairs overlooking the river. The investors have largely agreed to my restructuring plan. But it requires your cooperation. Or what? You'll throw me out completely? She dropped into the chair opposite me. You could, I suppose. That's what I would do. I know. Something passed between us then. A moment of recognition. How long have you been planning this? She asked. Since the ribbon cutting. About 3 weeks. He gave a short, surprised laugh. 3 weeks. I spent 3 years building this hotel. And I spent 15 years believing we were family, I countered. Lauren studied her scotch. We are family. Family doesn't erase each other's contributions. Family doesn't buy out investments at original value when the agreement was for percentage ownership. Business is. Don't, I cut her off. Don't say, business is business again. You used our family connection when it benefited you, then discarded it when it didn't. That was your choice. She fell silent, then asked softly, so what happens now? I'm offering you a role. The face of the Grand Bangkok. Public relations, guest relations, the social ambassador. You excel at that part. I'll handle operations, finance, and strategic planning. You'd let me stay? Genuine surprise crossed her face. After what I did? Despite what you might think, this isn't just about revenge, I said. It's about building something better. And despite everything, we do share blood. We share history. Lauren studied me with new eyes. You're more like me than I thought, she said finally, unsure whether to be proud or terrified by the revelation. No, I corrected her. I'm what you could have been if you'd understood that real power comes from lifting others, not climbing over them. She absorbed this, then raised her glass in a mockery of a toast. To family business. I didn't return the gesture. The paperwork will be ready tomorrow. Your choice, Lauren. A dignified partnership or a very public exit. As I reached the door, she called after me. Why offer me anything at all? I paused, hand on the doorknob. Because when you helped me get my first finance job, you told me something I never forgot. Success isn't about destroying your competition. It's about being so good they become irrelevant. I'm giving you the chance to remain relevant. I closed the door softly behind me, leaving her to make perhaps the first decision in her life where she didn't hold all the cards. The balanced resolution wasn't perfect. Nothing involving family ever is. But it offered a path forward that acknowledged our shared blood while establishing clear new boundaries. Whether she took it would be her choice. But this time I held the scissors. Lauren signed the partnership agreement the next morning. No fanfare, no photographers. Just the two of us, a notary and our lawyers in the same boardroom where we'd faced off hours earlier. She maintained her composure, but I caught her hand trembling slightly as she handed back the pen. I'll need a week, she said, to adjust to the new arrangement. I nodded. Take the time you need. The hotel runs itself for now. That was 3 months ago. The transition wasn't smooth at first. Nothing involving family ever is. Lauren disappeared to her vacation home in Phuket for those promised 7 days, then returned with a veneer of acceptance that fooled no one. She performed her public duties flawlessly but avoided our scheduled strategy meetings. Staff would tense when we occupied the same room, sensing the unresolved current between us. Meanwhile, I focused on delivering my promises. The unused conference space on the mezzanine level, originally designated for a private club Lauren had planned for elite guests, was my first target for transformation. What exactly are you planning for this space? Mr. Anand asked as we toured the area. Tall windows overlooked the river, and the morning light filled the room with possibility. A hospitality training center, I explained. Open to local youth, especially from underserved communities. Professional skills, language training, internship opportunities. His face brightened. Like the program at the Old Mandarin 30 years ago, the one that launched a generation of Thai hospitality leaders. Exactly, I smiled. But updated for today's industry. Within a month, we'd partnered with Bangkok's top hospitality college. Classroom furniture replaced the planned private bar. The first class of 20 students began their training, bright, eager faces who couldn't afford traditional education but showed natural talent for the industry. Lauren avoided the center entirely for the first few weeks. Then one afternoon I spotted her standing in the doorway during a session on guest relations. The instructor, a veteran hotelier, was struggling to demonstrate the subtle art of making high-end clients feel special without appearing obsequious, a particularly challenging concept to translate across cultures. I held my breath as Lauren hesitated, then stepped forward. "Hey, she asked the instructor. What followed was a masterclass in hospitality showmanship. Lauren demonstrated the perfect welcome stance, the ideal handshake pressure, the subtle eye contact that conveyed both respect and confidence. The students were mesmerized. The secret, she told them, is believing completely in the value of what you're offering. If you know in your heart that your service enhances their experience, it's not subservience, it's artistry. After class, I found her in the empty room looking out at the river. "You're good at that," I said. "Teaching." She didn't turn. "I've been in this business 30 years. I should have something to show for it beyond property deeds." It was the first crack in her armor, the first hint that perhaps there were aspects of the business she valued beyond control and profit. "We're planning master classes for the advanced students," I ventured. "Weekly sessions with industry specialists." She was quiet for so long I thought she'd ignore the implicit invitation. Then, "Thursdays might work for my schedule." That small beginning blossomed unexpectedly. Lauren's Thursday sessions became legendary among the students. She was demanding but engaging, drawing on decades of experience to illustrate her lessons with colorful industry stories. For the first time, she seemed to find satisfaction in contributing without controlling. Meanwhile, our other initiatives took root. The weekend market in the hotel's courtyard garden started small. Just 10 local artisans selling handcrafted goods directly to guests. No middleman, no markup from the hotel. By the second month, we had to create a rotation system to accommodate all the vendors who wanted to participate. The guests love it, the front desk manager reported. They're extending their stays to include market days. TripAdvisor ratings have jumped 2 points. More importantly, the market created exactly the community integration we'd promised Mr. Anand. The hotel was no longer a foreign island in Bangkok but a bridge between international visitors and local culture. Our approach caught attention. Ethical Tourism Thailand awarded us their sustainability certification. Luxury travel publications requested features. When Global Travel Monthly, the industry's most prestigious magazine, contacted us for an interview about the hotel's transformation, I knew we'd reached a turning point. They want to focus on the community initiatives and sustainable business model, I told Lauren during our now regular Tuesday meeting. I've arranged for them to speak with me, but I think you should be part of it too. She looked up surprised. You want me in the article? You're still the face of the Grand Bangkok. And you've been instrumental in the training program. I didn't mention that sharing the spotlight was intentional, modeling the collaborative leadership I wished she'd shown me. Lauren studied me for a moment. Thank you, she said simply. The article, when published, featured both of us, the family team revolutionizing luxury hospitality in Thailand. Lauren sent me the link without comment. Progress slow but real. Our most challenging test came in the 4th month, when my mother, Lauren's estranged sister, visited Bangkok. They hadn't spoken directly in nearly 20 years, communicating only through third parties when absolutely necessary. Their rift predated even Lauren's divorce, rooted in old grievances neither would fully explain. Mom had been skeptical about our new arrangement. She'll undermine you the first chance she gets, she warned over the phone. Maybe, I'd acknowledged. But we found a balance that works. The tension was palpable when they first encountered each other in the hotel lobby. My mother stiffened while Lauren's smile froze in place. Helen, Lauren nodded. You look well. Lauren, my mother returned coolly. Brittany says you've been cooperative. Somehow we survived the first dinner. And the second. By the third evening, watching them cautiously navigate conversation, I realized something profound. They were both trying for my sake. Their shared love for me had created the first bridge between them in decades. On my mother's final night, I arranged a private dinner in the chef's garden, where herbs and edible flowers grew on the hotel's rooftop. Under the stars with Bangkok glittering below, Lauren surprised us both. I should have acknowledged Brittany's contribution from the beginning, she said, looking directly at my mother. You raised a daughter with better business sense than I have, and better ethics. My mother's expression softened just slightly. She has your determination. That's not always a bad thing. It wasn't forgiveness, not completely. But it was a beginning. 6 months after the takeover, we were ready for the grand opening that mattered most to me. The community center we'd built in the hotel's east wing. What had been planned as another shopping arcade for luxury brands was now a multipurpose space for local organizations, educational programs, and cultural exchanges. We gathered in the garden where I'd once been excluded from the ribbon-cutting ceremony. This time, staff members, students, local partners, and yes, investors, formed a circle around the ribbons stretching across the community center's entrance. I stepped forward holding a pair of ceremonial scissors, silver with ribbons tied to the handles just like before. But instead of keeping them, I turned to Lauren. This was your vision once, I said loud enough for everyone to hear. Before profit margins and expansion plans. A place that connected people and honored traditions. I offered her the scissors. I think you should do the honors. Surprise flickered across her face, followed by something deeper. She stepped forward to take the scissors, then paused. She placed her hand over mine instead. Together, she said. This is what we built together. Side by side we approached the ribbon. As we positioned the scissors, Lauren leaned close and whispered, You've built something better than I ever could. I smiled, feeling the weight of my grandmother's jade pendant against my skin. We did it together. That's what family really means. The scissors closed. The ribbon fell. The crowd applauded. And in that moment, standing beside the aunt who had once betrayed me but now stood as my partner, I understood that the legacy we were building wasn't just about hotels or business success. It was about redefining what family could mean, not blind loyalty but earned trust. Not automatic forgiveness but the chance to grow better together. The Grand Bangkok Hotel would continue to welcome guests from around the world. But its true foundation wasn't the land it stood on or the capital that built it. Its foundation was the understanding that the strongest business, like the strongest family, is built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and the courage to begin again when necessary. And that was a legacy worth building. My husband divorced me by text. I'm leaving you and moving to Las Vegas with my 22-year-old girlfriend. I've already emptied our joint account, sold your car and canceled your credit cards, huh? But when he realized what I had done, it was already too late. I've taken everything from you, he wrote. Cute. Very cute. I let the words sit there for a moment, my fingers tracing the rim of my glass. He thought he had won. But what he didn't know, what he could never have guessed, is that by the time he sent that text, there was nothing left for him to take. Because I already had it all. Before we dive in, I just want to take a moment to thank each of you for being part of this journey. If you love stories of resilience, empowerment, and getting the last word, make sure to subscribe. It's completely free and helps us continue bringing you these unforgettable narratives. Now let's get into it. I set my phone down slowly, almost reverently, as if his words deserved a moment of silence before their inevitable demise. The room around me was quiet, the soft hum of the city beyond my window the only sound. He imagined me broken, sobbing, lost in despair. How disappointing for him. I reached for the sleek leather folder on my desk, the one I had prepared months ago when his behavior had started shifting. At first I had chalked it up to the usual excuses: stress, routine, the wear and tear of years together. But then came the secrecy, the hurried calls, the subtle distancing. I had watched in silence, not out of fear or uncertainty but calculation. I had learned long ago that silence was a weapon. And I had wielded it well. His text, so smug, so final, was nothing more than a confirmation of what I already knew. He had planned this. Mapped it out like a grand escape, believing he had orchestrated my downfall with the precision of a mastermind. But a true mastermind never reveals their game until the final move. And I wasn't playing checkers. I was playing chess. The pieces he never saw moving. I had been 3 steps ahead long before he ever thought of betraying me. The first thing I did, I moved the money. Not all at once, no, I wasn't reckless. Small, calculated transfers, ones he wouldn't notice amidst his own careless spending. A little here, a little there, until our so-called joint account was nothing more than a shallow puddle of leftovers. By the time he walked into that bank ready to drain our savings, he had unknowingly left with crumbs. And the best part? He wouldn't realize it right away. He would think he had won. He would revel in his supposed victory, believing he had left me stranded. But reality would hit him soon enough. The moment of realization. I could almost picture it. Him standing in the bank, confidently handing over his account details, expecting a hefty sum to fund his new life. And then, confusion. A frown. A quiet panic as the numbers didn't add up. He would check again, perhaps blaming a system glitch, maybe even demanding to speak to a manager. But the answer would be the same. Insufficient funds. Not exactly the grand departure he had envisioned. And what of my car? The one he so boldly claimed to have sold? That had been taken care of too. Weeks ago I had transferred the title to my best friend's name just in case. Whoever bought it had just engaged in a mysterious dealing with a man who had no right to sell it in the first place. A fraudulent sale. A legal mess. Another problem for him to unravel while I sat back and watched. The call he would never expect. I didn't check my phone, didn't bother looking for a response. I knew it would come eventually. The moment he realized that his great escape had unraveled before it had even begun, that's when the calls would start. First, maybe once or twice just to see if I would answer. Then again more urgently, more insistently. And finally, when he could no longer deny the truth. When desperation seeped in like an unwelcome guest, that's when he would break. Would he apologize? Doubtful. He wasn't the kind. He would rationalize, attempt to manipulate, try to convince me that I was the one being unreasonable. We can work something out. You don't want to do this. Think about all we had. The audacity of a man who thought his actions were the only ones that mattered. But he wouldn't find me where he left me. No, I had already moved forward while he remained trapped in the wreckage of his own making. The moment I had been waiting for. The phone finally buzzed. Not a text this time, but a call. I let it ring once. Twice. 3 times. I could almost feel his frustration through the screen, the slow dawning realization that he was no longer in control. Then with a slow, deliberate exhale I answered. I didn't speak first. Let him sit in the silence he had once left me in. And then, in a voice as calm as the storm he never saw coming, I simply said, "You took everything from me? Oh darling. I left you with nothing." Silence. A hesitation on the other end. Then the stammering. What did you do?" I smiled, sipping from my glass as I watched the city lights flicker in the distance. "Oh sweetheart. You should have been paying more attention." And then, before he could sputter another useless excuse, I ended the call. It was already too late for him. And just like that, the game was over. I won. The call ended, and with it, the last remnants of his illusion. I leaned back, feeling the weight of months of preparation settle into something lighter. Satisfaction. He had walked into his own trap, completely unaware, completely confident. The irony was almost poetic. I stared at my reflection in the window, the city glowing beneath me, a sea of moving lights. The woman who looked back wasn't broken, wasn't lost. She was steady. Taken. A version of herself that had been waiting to emerge. I had known. Of course I had known. Not just about his betrayal, but about who he was at his core. A man who mistook deception for brilliance. Who believed he could take and take without consequence. And that's what made this all the more satisfying. He had orchestrated his own downfall, one careless mistake at a time. The first time he came home late, I noticed. The first time he moved money out of our account, I tracked it. The first time he lied, I listened. But I never reacted, never confronted. Said I prepared. Because revenge isn't about anger. It's about patience. My first move was the bank. Quiet, subtle withdrawals over time, each small enough to go unnoticed but large enough to make an impact. The money he thought he had stolen was nothing more than a shadow of what had once been there. By the time he emptied the account, he was draining what I had left behind, believing he had outsmarted me. The second move was the car. A simple transfer of ownership, signed, notarized, locked away in a safe place. He had no idea he was selling something that legally belonged to someone else. A disastrous mistake that would catch up with him soon enough. And then the credit cards. He thought he had canceled mine. I let him believe it. But while he was cutting me off, I was securing my own, under my name, separate from his reach. The moment he realized he had stranded himself instead, I hoped he enjoyed the irony. Each step had been calculated, each move a quiet checkmate. And now, as he spiraled, desperately trying to grasp onto the control he had so easily thrown away, I simply waited. He would call again. He would beg. He would try to turn this around. But I was already gone. The city outside buzzed with life, but I had never felt calmer. The waiting was over. The game was won. And all that was left was to watch him crumble. I picked up my glass, took a slow sip and smiled. It was already too late. I swirled the last remnants of my drink, the ice clinking softly against the glass. Somewhere across the country, my ex-husband, was experiencing the kind of cold realization that tightened the chest and burned through the veins. The moment where confidence turns to disbelief, where the mind races to grasp at something, anything to explain the impossible. I imagined him standing at a sleek Las Vegas bank counter, his impatience growing as the teller's brows furrowed at the screen. His voice, clipped and agitated, demanding an explanation. And then, confusion. That can't be right. Check again. The numbers wouldn't change. They never would. I leaned back, picturing it so vividly it almost felt real. The banker, polite but firm, shaking their head. The repeated denials. The dawning realization. And then the first cracks of panic. He had counted on that money. It was supposed to fund his grand escape. Champagne suites, luxury shopping, expensive dinners with the new woman he had so proudly chosen over me. A new life built on what he had stolen. Except he hadn't stolen anything. I had simply let him take what was never worth keeping. The phone buzzed beside me. Not the first time. It had been going off for the past hour, each call a little more frantic than the last. I let it ring. Let him stew. He needed time to process to truly understand what had happened. Another buzz. A voicemail this time. Curious, I tapped the screen, lifting the phone to my ear. What did you do? The money's gone. Where is it? This isn't funny. Call me back. Now. A small, satisfied smile tugged at my lips. Oh, darling. It was never yours to begin with. He would try again. I knew that much. He wasn't the type to admit defeat easily. Not when he had spent years believing himself untouchable, always one step ahead. But there was a difference between confidence and arrogance. And arrogance had been his downfall. I stood, stretching, my muscles pleasantly sore from the weight finally lifting off my shoulders. Another call. This time I answered. Silence. Not the triumphant, smug kind he had expected. Not the shattered, broken version he had hoped for. Just silence. And then his voice. Low, forced calm covering unmistakable desperation. You need to fix this. I almost laughed. I needed to fix this? The audacity. I let the pause drag on long enough for his nerves to fray. Finally I spoke. Fix what exactly? The bank. The money. I don't know what you did, but I want it back. I inhaled deeply, pretending to think. Oh, you mean the money you took from our joint account? I let the words settle before continuing, voice smooth as silk. Well, unfortunately, that account wasn't as full as you thought. You see, I had been preparing for this moment for quite some time. Silence. Not the stunned kind. No, this was worse. This was realization. You knew. Of course I knew. A sharp exhale on the other end. He was spiraling. I could almost hear the gears in his head turning, desperately trying to find a way out. Fine, he said, voice tight. Fine. We'll figure something out. I just need you to transfer some money back. That was the moment I truly smiled. Oh, sweetheart. You're assuming I have any reason to help you. A sharp intake of breath. You don't get it, he snapped, frustration seeping through. I need that money. And I needed my marriage to mean something. But here we are. Another pause. A shift in his tone. Look, I think we're done here. I hung up. The messages started immediately. The guilt trip. The faux concern. The thinly veiled threats. It was all so predictable. I ignored them all. Somewhere in a Vegas hotel room, a man who had spent his entire life believing he could manipulate and take without consequence was finally learning what it felt like to have nothing. And I had never felt more free. I stared at my phone, watching his messages stack up like a house of cards teetering on collapse. First the demands. Then the bargaining. Finally the desperation. You're making a mistake. We can talk about this. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to fix this now. This is going to come back on you. I'll make sure of it. That last one made me laugh. The irony of a man who had gleefully dismantled my life, now grasping at the last fraying threads of his own. He still didn't understand that this wasn't about revenge. It was about closure. About making sure he felt the weight of every selfish decision, every callous move, every moment he had treated me like I was disposable. And the worst part? I wasn't even finished yet. He had thought the empty bank account was the worst of it. That was just the beginning. I opened my laptop, clicking through the neatly organized folders I had been building for months. Documents, statements, emails. Evidence. Every shady business deal, every careless financial decision, every secret he had tried to keep buried. He had built his life on illusions, a carefully crafted persona of success and control. I had simply gathered the truth and placed it neatly on a platter. The first email went out. A polite, professional message to one of his former business partners, someone I knew had already been growing suspicious of his handling of their joint projects. I attached the files, letting the facts speak for themselves. A courtesy, really. The second email was to our former landlord. The lease had always been under my name, he just never noticed. With a few clicks, I ensured that he would return from his little Las Vegas adventure to find his access revoked. No key, no security clearance, no home waiting for him. The third? That one was my favorite. The car buyer. The man who had unknowingly paid for a vehicle my ex had no legal right to sell. A short conversation, a forwarded document proving ownership, and a simple question. Would you like to press charges? I didn't stay to hear his answer. I already knew what it would be. With each move I could feel the walls closing in around him. Not by force, not by vengeance, just consequence. Pure, unfiltered consequence. The phone buzzed again. This time a call. I let it ring. Twice. 3 times. Then finally I answered. I didn't speak first. I let him sit in the silence, let the weight of everything crash down on him. What did you do? His voice was no longer the smug, arrogant tone from his first message. It was tight, panicked. He had finally caught up to the reality I had set in motion. I simply made sure everything was exactly as it should be, I said smoothly. You ruined me. No, I corrected. I just let the truth catch up with you. Another silence. I imagined him gripping his phone, pacing in some overpriced hotel suite, his world crumbling faster than he could piece it back together. I can fix this, he tried, the desperation bleeding through. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. You don't understand, do you? I said, my voice eerily calm. There is nothing left to fix. He was still trying to play the game, still trying to bluff his way out. But the board was empty and the pieces had long since been moved. You took everything from me, he said, his voice breaking. I smiled just slightly. No, I said, voice steady. You gave it away. And with that I ended the call. Let him sit in the ruins. Let him finally understand what it meant to lose. Because for the first time in his life, he had no one left to blame but himself. I placed my phone down, exhaling slowly as the weight of finality settled over me. There was nothing left to say. Nothing left to take. He had played his hand, believing he was untouchable, and now he was standing in the ruins of his own making. I could almost hear his breaths on the other end even though I had ended the call. Shallow, frantic. His mind racing, scrambling for a way out. But there wasn't one. He had spent years manipulating, taking, deceiving. And now for the first time he was the one left stranded. A flicker of movement outside caught my eye. The city was still alive, oblivious to the storm unraveling in one man's life. A man who had thought he could walk away without consequences. And then the phone buzzed again. I didn't need to look. I already knew. He wasn't done yet. I let it ring once. Twice. Then I answered. Silence. Not the defiant, arrogant silence from before. This was different. This was hesitation. I waited. Let him sit in the discomfort. Let him feel the weight of it. I need to talk to you, he finally said. His voice was no longer demanding. No longer sharp with entitlement. It was lower, softer. Strained. I leaned back, toying with the rim of my glass. We already talked. No. You don't understand, he stammered. I made a mistake. I laughed. A quiet, disbelieving sound. Oh, sweetheart. That much is obvious. He exhaled sharply. I can fix this. We can fix this. I felt a strange kind of amusement, a detached curiosity. He still believed words could bend reality. That he could talk his way out, smooth things over. You're not listening, I said, tilting my head. There is nothing left to fix. I've simply made sure you have exactly what you gave me. Nothing. A long pause. I could almost hear the way his throat tightened, the way realization pressed into him. I know I hurt you, he tried shifting tactics. I was selfish. I see that now. But we built a life together. That has to mean something. It was almost impressive the way he adapted. How quickly he abandoned his pride the moment he felt it slipping. But I had seen the pattern before. The charm, the guilt, the subtle push toward forgiveness. You're right, I said, my voice smooth. We did build something. I let the words settle before continuing. And then you set it on fire and walked away. A shaky breath on the other end. His walls were crumbling. I don't know where to go, he admitted, voice raw. I don't have, he stopped himself. As if saying it aloud would solidify the truth. I stayed silent, waiting. I have nothing, he whispered. There was. I let the words hang between us. Let him taste them. I know, I said simply. He inhaled sharply as if the finality of it had just hit him. So what? You just get to move on while you what? I cut in, my voice unwavering. Face the consequences. Feel the weight of your own choices. Another silence. But this time there was no fight left in it. No anger, no arrogance. Just surrender. I didn't think it would end like this, he admitted. I closed my eyes for a brief moment. Not out of sadness. Not out of regret. But because of how utterly predictable this moment was. Neither did I said finally. And then without another word I ended the call. This time I knew he wouldn't call back. Because now he finally understood. It was over. The silence after I ended the call was different this time. It wasn't the absence of sound but the absence of him. No more pleading, no more manipulation, no more empty words that once carried weight. He had finally accepted what I had known all along. There was no escape. I set my phone down, exhaling slowly. The city outside stretched endlessly, lights blinking like distant stars. Somewhere in a cold hotel room he was sitting with his head in his hands, staring at a future he had never planned for. I imagined the sequence unfolding. First he would try to convince himself there was still a way out. A loophole. A last-minute save. He'd pace the room, checking his phone, waiting for a message that would never come. Then the reality would settle in like a slow-moving storm. The hotel bill would arrive and his credit card would decline. He would check his accounts, hoping, praying, that something had changed. That maybe, just maybe, I had relented. But the numbers wouldn't lie. The money was gone. The car was gone. The home, no longer his to return to. With nowhere else to turn, he would reach out to the only people left, his so-called friends. The ones who had laughed with him, toasted to his freedom, cheered him on when he flaunted his new life. But those people were never really his. They were there for the lifestyle, for the indulgence, for the illusion. The moment the money vanished, so did their loyalty. One by one they would stop responding. Calls would go straight to voicemail. Messages would be left unread. And then the final blow. The woman he had abandoned me for, the one he had thrown everything away to impress, would realize the truth. He wasn't the charming, successful man she thought he was. He wasn't the provider, the protector, the dream she had convinced herself he could be. He was broke. And a man with nothing was a man who held no value in her world. I could picture it so clearly. The way her tone would shift. The way her patience would run thin. At first she might pretend to care. Say the right things, offer small reassurances. But then, she would leave. Not in a dramatic scene. Not in a tearful goodbye. Just gone. A simple message perhaps. I need some space. Or worse, nothing at all. And then he would be alone. For the first time in his life there would be no safety net. No fallback plan. Just the weight of everything he had done. I stood, stretching my arms, feeling lighter than I had in years. There was nothing left to hold me down. I had won. Not because I had taken anything from him but because I had taken myself back. And that was something he would never get back. Not now. Not ever. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window watching the city move below me. The streets pulsed with life. Cars weaving through traffic, people hurrying to destinations unknown. I used to feel trapped in moments like this, suffocated by the weight of my past, by the choices I thought I had to live with. But tonight the air was different. I was free. For the first time in years I wasn't waiting for the next betrayal, the next excuse, the next moment where I had to swallow my disappointment and pretend it didn't hurt. The past was behind me and the road ahead was mine alone to shape. I turned, letting my fingers skim across the sleek marble countertop, the cool surface grounding me in this new reality. My new apartment was nothing extravagant, just enough space to feel comfortable, to breathe. It wasn't filled with meaningless luxuries or empty reminders of someone else's idea of success. It was mine. Every piece of furniture, every book on the shelf, every decision, I had chosen it. No compromises. No settling. The soft chime of my phone pulled me from my thoughts. A message. But not from him. Not anymore. It was a friend checking in, reminding me about the dinner we had planned. A small thing, but it made me smile. For so long I had let myself shrink, let my world revolve around one person who had never truly seen me. Now I was reclaiming everything. Friendships, dreams, even the simple joy of making plans that were mine alone. I grabbed my coat, slipping into it effortlessly. As I stepped out into the crisp evening air, I felt lighter. There was no more weight on my shoulders, no more silent battles I had to fight. The past was exactly where it belonged, behind me. And for the first time I was walking toward something instead of running away. The evening air felt crisp against my skin as I walked down the bustling street, weaving through groups of people lost in their own conversations. The city hummed with energy, its rhythm steady, unconcerned with the ghosts of my past. For the first time in a long while I wasn't looking over my shoulder. There was no weight pressing against my chest, no silent battle raging inside my mind. Everything was exactly as it should be. Or so I thought. A familiar number flashed on my screen. Not him. I had made sure he no longer had the power to reach me. No, this was different. I hesitated before answering. I wasn't sure you'd pick up, the voice on the other end said smoothly. It had been a while since I'd heard it, but the familiarity was undeniable. I figured you'd be calling sooner or later, I replied, my voice steady. You really outdid yourself this time. There was a note of amusement, but beneath it something else. Curiosity. Maybe even admiration. I had to, I said simply. There was a brief pause, the kind that held meaning in its silence. He's scrambling, they continued, their voice laced with something close to satisfaction. Called in every favor he thought he had left. But it turns out no one's interested in helping him. Not anymore. I let that sink in. He thought he was untouchable, I said finally. Turns out he was just playing a game he never understood. A small chuckle on the other end. And you? You were the one holding all the cards. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Because we both knew the truth. This had never been a battle of strength. It had been a game of patience, of strategy. And while he had spent years believing he was the one in control, I had been quietly dismantling his foundation piece by piece. What now? They asked. I glanced up at the skyline, the city stretching out endlessly before me. Now? I repeated, a slow smile forming. Now I move forward. Another pause. And him? I exhaled, my breath steady. He lives with the consequences of his choices, I said finally. Just like the rest of us. The call ended. I slipped my phone into my pocket and kept walking, the past finally behind me. And for the first time in my life I wasn't looking back. On our honeymoon he pushed me into the hotel pool in front of his friends, laughed, called me just a charity case. That night, while he was passed out drunk, I slipped his safe code from his phone, took the cash and diamonds and left the ring in a glass of bourbon. He woke up alone, robbed and humiliated. The bourbon burned my throat as I stared at his phone. 3 a.m. and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. There was proof in black and white. My entire marriage had been a business transaction. I wasn't Ethan's wife. I was his acquisition. My mind flashed back to our first meeting. 6 months ago, I'd been Claire Adams, respected marketing consultant with the Department of Energy's Clean Tech Initiative. I'd noticed him immediately at the networking mixer. Tall, confident, with that perfect smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Little did I know I was being sized up like a corporate target. Claire, right? The brains behind the solar grid campaign. His voice carried that practiced smoothness wealthy men seem born with. Ethan Anderson. I've been hoping to meet you. I remember feeling flattered. In a room full of powerful people he'd singled me out. Now I understood why. My security clearance and connections to the government contract worth millions made me valuable. Nothing more. I don't usually do this, he'd said after an hour of surprisingly engaging conversation, but would you like to have dinner sometime? His fingers had brushed mine as he handed me his business card. Anderson Technologies CO, embossed in silver. I should have recognized the predatory gleam in his eyes, but I mistook it for interest. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant where he claimed to know the chef. He ordered for both of us without asking, a red flag I dismissed as old-fashioned charm. The way he studied me while I spoke about my work should have been another warning. He wasn't fascinated, he was gathering intelligence. You're not like other women in this industry, he'd said, refilling my wine glass. They're all ambition and no substance. You actually care about the impact of your work. I blushed then, taken in by the compliment that I now realize was carefully crafted manipulation. Ethan had done his homework on me. My middle-class background, my father's early death, my scholarship to Cornell, my dedication to renewable energy projects. He knew exactly which buttons to push. The courtship moved with dizzying speed. Weekend getaways to his cabin in Vermont. Surprise lunch deliveries to my office. Late-night calls where he seemed genuinely interested in my thoughts on everything from climate policy to my favorite books. All an elaborate performance. 3 weeks in, he invited me to Sunday dinner with his family. The Anderson estate sprawled across 10 acres in Connecticut, old money mingling with new tech wealth. His mother Caroline's smile never reached her eyes as she assessed my off-the-rack dress. His father Richard barely looked up from his phone except to ask pointed questions about my government connections. Claire works with the DOE's Renewable Energy Initiative, Ethan had explained, his hand possessively on my lower back. She's helping reshape America's power infrastructure. How useful, Caroline had replied, her gaze flicking between us with calculation. That night, driving back to the city, Ethan revealed more about his family's expectations. They've always pushed me to be the best, sometimes ruthlessly, he'd admitted, seeming vulnerable for once. You're the first woman I've brought home who made me feel like I could be myself. Another calculated line in his script. I recognize that now. The gift started the following week. A designer watch I mentioned liking in passing. Earrings that reminded him of my eyes. Access to his company's private box at Yankees games. Each present came with the same message: you deserve to be spoiled, Claire. What I didn't see was how each gift raised the stakes, making me increasingly indebted to his generosity. How could I question someone so thoughtful, so attentive? 2 months in, we attended a tech conference in Chicago. Ethan introduced me to everyone as the brilliant Claire Adams, his arm always around my waist, his lips frequently brushing my ear to whisper inside jokes. His investor friends treated me with surface-level respect that I mistook for acceptance. You've changed him, one of them told me during cocktail hour, whiskey in hand. Never seen Anderson so settled. He'd studied me with something like amusement. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. It wasn't a compliment. It was surveillance, reporting back to their circle that Ethan's plan was progressing. The proposal came on day 83 of our relationship. I'd counted once, marveling at how quickly we'd fallen in love. The restaurant overlooked Central Park. The ring was 3 carats, ethically sourced, he'd assured me, and the speech seemed heartfelt. Claire, you've shown me what it means to have purpose beyond profit, he'd said, eyes glistening with what I believed were tears of emotion rather than the crocodile performance they actually were. I want to build something lasting with you. Something meaningful. My colleagues were shocked. Isn't this moving a bit fast, Claire? But I defended him fiercely. My best friend Megan tried to intervene the night before our small, rushed ceremony. I barely know him anymore, she'd said, concern etching her face. 4 months, Claire. You've known him 4 months and suddenly you're eloping? I'd accused her of jealousy, cutting her off when she tried to point out how I'd changed, how I'd been canceling our plans, how my confidence seemed diminished. You don't understand what we have, I'd insisted. The we, that never actually existed. The wedding was intimate, by his design I now realized, to limit witnesses. My mother looked uncertain as she hugged me. You're sure about this? She'd whispered. I'd nodded emphatically, mistaking my own anxiety for excitement. That night, as I signed the rushed prenuptial agreement his family lawyer had prepared, Ethan had kissed my forehead. Just formalities, babe. Nothing that will ever matter to us. One more lie in a foundation built on deception. As I sit here in our honeymoon suite, his drunken snores filling the room, I think about all the signs I ignored. All the red flags I justified away. The calculated courtship that led me straight into his trap. His phone in my hand contains the blueprint of my destruction, and now it will become the architect of his. The ice in his bourbon glass clinks as I drop my wedding ring into it. Some marriages end with a whimper. Mine would end with justice. The morning after our wedding, I woke to Ethan on his phone, voice low and businesslike. When he noticed me stirring, his tone immediately shifted to honey-sweet as he ended the call. "Morning, Mrs. Anderson," he said, kissing my forehead. That duality would become the hallmark of our marriage. The man the world saw versus the one I lived with behind closed doors. The first real change happened when we returned from our brief weekend pre-honeymoon at his family's lake house. Ethan insisted I move into his downtown apartment rather than us finding a new place together. Why start from scratch when I already have the perfect home? He'd reasoned. I didn't realize I was surrendering neutral territory, that everything would be his space, his rules. My cherished collection of art books and framed photography prints ended up in storage. They don't match our aesthetic, he explained, already using our to mean his preferences. My comfortable reading chair disappeared while I was at work. Surprise. I got you something better, he announced, replacing it with an expensive but painfully uncomfortable designer piece. Within 2 weeks, the apartment no longer contained traces of Claire Adams. I had been erased and rebranded as Mrs. Ethan Anderson. Don't you think it's time to consider your next career move? He asked one night over dinner, 3 weeks after the wedding. I looked up confused. What do you mean? I love my position at the DOE. He swirled his bourbon, that amber liquid that would become the scent memory of my oppression. It's just that with my connections you could do something more significant. My work is already significant, I countered, feeling strangely defensive. We're helping reshape America's energy future. His smile didn't reach his eyes. That's adorable. But you're an Anderson now. Playing with solar panels is fine for Claire Adams. Mrs. Anderson should have ambitions that match her station. When I didn't immediately agree, his face hardened momentarily before softening into concern. I just want what's best for you, for us. Trust me on this. That became his mantra. Trust me, trust me, trust me, until questioning him felt like betrayal. The first time he checked my phone, he didn't even try to hide it. Who's Michael? He asked, scrolling through my messages while I cooked dinner. My colleague from the Federal Grant Committee, I answered, trying to ignore the invasion of privacy. We're coordinating the quarterly review. Seems friendly. His tone made my stomach knot. Maybe I should join you for lunch sometime, meet your work friends. He did exactly that the following week, arriving unannounced at my office with takeout for everyone. He charmed my coworkers while subtly establishing territory, his hand never leaving my lower back, interrupting whenever Michael spoke directly to me. After that, work invitations dwindled. My colleague Jen, once a daily lunch companion, started making excuses. Months later, she admitted, "Your husband made it clear you were limiting outside work commitments. He said you felt overwhelmed but didn't know how to say no." Words I'd never spoken, boundaries I'd never set. Megan tried hardest to maintain our friendship. "Girls' night still on for Thursday?" She texted 6 weeks into my marriage. Before I could respond, Ethan appeared behind me. "Tell her we have plans." "Do we?" I asked, genuinely uncertain. "I was going to surprise you. Dinner with the Wilsons. Potentially huge investors." His tone left no room for discussion. When I texted Megan to cancel, the third time that month, her response cut deep. "I miss my friend. The real Claire, not this Stepford wife version." I stared at those words until Ethan asked who I was texting. I lied for the first time, saying it was my mother. The fact that I felt compelled to hide a simple message marked how far things had deteriorated. My uneasiness grew into constant anxiety. Ethan's moods became my weather system. I checked for storm signs the moment he walked through the door. The set of his jaw, the looseness of his tie, whether he reached immediately for the bourbon decanter, all indicators of the evening ahead. On good days he was attentive, even loving. On bad days his criticisms cut to the bone. "That outfit makes you look unprofessional," he'd remark as I left for work, making me doubt the wardrobe choices I'd made confidently for years. "You're misremembering," he'd insist when I recalled conversations differently than he did, making me question my own mind. "You always get emotional when we discuss finances," he'd sigh when I asked about account access, making me feel irrational for wanting basic information about our shared life. The day I found the first camera was purely accidental. I'd been searching for a spare phone charger in his home office, a room he'd told me to not worry about cleaning. The small black device was tucked into the bookshelf, lens angled perfectly toward the desk chair. I might have believed it was for security if it hadn't been so carefully hidden. Heart racing, I began a methodical search of our apartment while Ethan was at a business dinner. 2 more cameras in the living room disguised as clock radios. Another in our bedroom hidden in the air vent. That night, I lay awake beside him, wondering why my husband needed surveillance in our private spaces. Instead of confrontation, fear kept me silent. I began changing clothes in the bathroom, watching my words, performing the role of contented wife even in supposed privacy. The final domino fell when I discovered I couldn't access my own bank account. The error message claimed incorrect password, though I'd used the same one for years. At the bank the next day, the manager's uncomfortable expression told me everything before he spoke. "Mrs. Anderson, your accounts have been consolidated under the joint management structure. Your husband assured us this was done with your full knowledge and consent." I maintained composure somehow. Of course, I must have forgotten. That night, Ethan presented me with a credit card. "For your expenses," he explained as if doing me a favor. "I've set up automatic payments, so you don't need to worry about managing the tedious details. Financial independence, gone." Career autonomy undermined. Friendships isolated. Privacy non-existent. Identity eroded. I lived in a beautiful prison with invisible bars, constructed so gradually I hadn't noticed until I was fully caged. My thoughts, movements, relationships, and finances all controlled by the man who'd vowed to honor and cherish me. As I prepared for our real honeymoon, the resort stay he'd insisted on delaying until some mysterious business timing was right, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back had the same features as Claire Adams, but her eyes held something new, the hollow recognition of a person who finally understands she's been expertly manipulated. I packed my suitcase carefully, hiding my anxiety behind a practiced smile. I didn't know then that this trip would break both my heart and my chains, that it would end with bourbon, diamonds, and the first breath of freedom I'd taken months. The Blue Ridge Mountain Resort loomed before us like a postcard fantasy, stone and timber rising against the April sky, staff lined up to greet arriving guests with practiced smiles. Ethan's hand rested possessively on my lower back as the valet took our rental car. "Anderson reservation," he announced at check-in, his voice carrying that entitled edge I'd grown to recognize. "We'll need the Laurel Suite." The concierge's fingers danced across her keyboard. "I have you in the Pine Suite, Mr. Anderson." "That won't work." His smile remained fixed, but I felt the tension radiating from him. "I specifically requested the Laurel. It overlooks the south lawn where the reception will be held tomorrow." Reception? This was the first I'd heard of any event. I maintained my composure, having learned that questioning Ethan publicly meant private consequences. The concierge made a call, spoke in hushed tones, then smiled brightly. "We've arranged it, Mr. Anderson. My apologies for the confusion." In the elevator I finally asked, "What reception?" "Just a small gathering. Some investors are coincidentally staying here this weekend. Perfect timing to introduce you properly." His tone implied I should be grateful for the opportunity. The Laurel Suite sprawled over 1,500 square feet of luxury, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing mountains and manicured gardens. Under different circumstances I might have gasped with delight. Instead I noted the precise view of the lawn and pool area. Nothing coincidental about it. "Wear the blue dress tonight," Ethan instructed, checking his watch. "We're meeting everyone for drinks at 7. The small gathering turned out to be 8 men and their ornamental wives, all connected to Ethan's latest venture. I recognized James Wilson and Peter Thorne from tech industry headlines, both notorious for their aggressive investment strategies. The others were equally powerful if less publicly known. "So you're the government connection," Wilson said by way of greeting, not bothering to use my name. His eyes assessed me like merchandise. "Claire works in sustainable energy marketing," Ethan corrected smoothly, his arm tightening around my waist. "But she's taking a step back to consider more impactful opportunities." News to me. I smiled through gritted teeth, remembering the cameras at home recording every expression. "Smart move," Thorne chimed in. "Those government positions are dead ends anyway. Plus the clearance process is a nightmare, all those background checks." His glance between me and Ethan carried unspoken meaning. The evening progressed with business talk thinly disguised as social conversation. The men dominated while their wives discussed vacation properties and charity galas. When I attempted to contribute to the business discussion, naively thinking my industry knowledge might be valuable, conversation awkwardly paused. "Sweetie, why don't you tell Susan about that art gallery we visited last month?" Ethan suggested, effectively dismissing me to the wives' corner. I excused myself to the restroom, splashing cold water on my face to cool the burning humiliation. In the mirror I barely recognized myself. Designer dress, professional makeup, hairstyle to Ethan's specifications. A doll dressed for display. The second night brought more of the same, but with Ethan drinking steadily, bourbon after bourbon disappearing as he grew louder, more forceful with his opinions. His public mask slipped further with each glass. "The problem with government contracts," he announced to the group, "is dealing with all the self-important bureaucrats who think they're saving the world." His eyes flicked to me. "No offense, babe." Laughter rippled around the table. I smiled mechanically, nursing my single glass of wine. By the third day, I'd become nearly invisible except when Ethan needed to demonstrate his ownership. His hand would suddenly grasp mine during conversations, or he'd interrupt whatever I was saying to kiss my cheek, performances of affection that felt like warnings. That afternoon, everyone gathered by the heated pool despite the cool mountain air. I sat on a lounger, wrapped in a resort robe over my swimsuit, observing the dynamics of these powerful men and their carefully selected partners. Wilson approached, bourbon in hand, everyone mimicking Ethan's drink preference. "You've really cleaned up nicely," he said, his voice low. "Ethan said you were a diamond in the rough when he found you." Good call on his part. Before I could respond, Ethan appeared beside us, his own tumbler nearly empty. "What are we discussing?" "Just complimenting your taste," Wilson replied with a smirk. "Though I wouldn't have pegged you for the rescuer type." Something dark flashed across Ethan's face. "Claire, get me another drink," he ordered, handing me his glass without looking at me. I stood, taking the glass mostly to extract myself from the tension between them. As I turned toward the bar, I heard Wilson chuckle. "Seriously, Anderson, what's your angle? She's pretty enough, but hardly your usual type." I paused, knowing I shouldn't listen but unable to move. "Claire has useful connections," Ethan replied, voice pitched low but carrying in the mountain air. "Sometimes you need to invest in unexpected places." "Quite an investment," another voice joined in. Thorne, I realized. "Marriage seems extreme for a business connection." "It's temporary," Ethan said dismissively. "Once the contracts are secured, I'll find an exit strategy. Nothing messier than divorcing someone with government ties, though. Have to be careful." The glass nearly slipped from my fingers. Every suspicion, every doubt I'd pushed aside crashed through me in a wave of validation and devastation. I turned back, face burning, intending to what? Confront him? Create a scene? I wasn't sure. Ethan saw me standing there, understood immediately what I'd overheard. Instead of shame or apology, his expression hardened into something dangerous. He crossed to me in 3 quick strides, took the empty glass from my shaking hand. For a heartbeat I thought he might apologize. Instead he placed his hands on my shoulders and shoved, hard. I stumbled backward, arms windmilling, before plunging into the freezing pool. The shock of cold water stole my breath as I sank, designer sundress billowing around me. When I surfaced, gasping and disoriented, Ethan stood at the pool's edge, surrounded by his investors. "Just showing them the charity project floats," he announced, raising an imaginary glass in mock toast. "Told you guys she was adaptable." Their laughter cut worse than the cold. Women turned away, pretending not to see. Staff hovered uncertainly, no one willing to help the woman who'd been deliberately humiliated. I pushed soaked hair from my face and made my way to the pool steps, dignity in tatters but something else rising within me, clarity, rage, resolve. Water streamed from my ruined dress as I walked past Ethan without acknowledgement, past the witnesses to my degradation, past the point of caring what anyone thought. In that moment, dripping on expensive marble, listening to their laughter fade behind me, I understood 3 things with perfect clarity. My marriage was a business transaction, my husband was a dangerous fraud, and I needed to escape before he discovered I knew. I left wet footprints across the lobby, drawing stares and whispers. The elevator ride to our suite stretched eternally, my sodden clothes chilling my skin but not the anger burning inside. For the first time in months, my mind felt laser-sharp, unfogged by doubt or manipulation. By the time I reached our room, I knew with absolute certainty I would not spend another night as Mrs. Ethan Anderson. I peeled off my soaked dress in the bathroom, wrapping myself in the plush hotel robe. My reflection stared back at me, hair plastered to my skull, mascara tracking down my cheeks, eyes finally completely clear. The woman in the mirror wasn't a victim anymore. She was a survivor plotting her escape. For 2 hours I sat motionless on the bathroom floor, back against the cold tile wall, planning. Ethan wouldn't return immediately. He'd stay with his cronies, drinking bourbon and laughing about his dripping wet wife. I had time but not much. The suite door slammed around 11, followed by the thunk of shoes hitting the floor. Uneven footsteps. The familiar clink of the decanter against a glass. More bourbon, as if he hadn't had enough. "Claire." His voice was thick, vowels stretched by intoxication. "You hiding from me?" I remained silent, pulse hammering in my throat. "Fine. Be that way." The television flicked on, sports commentary filling the suite. I cracked the bathroom door an hour later. Ethan sprawled across the sofa, head lolled back, mouth open in drunken sleep. 3 empty mini bottles from the sweets bar littered the coffee table. His shirt was stained with what looked like spilled whiskey. Moving silently, I crossed to check the bedroom. I returned to study my sleeping husband, the man who'd called me a charity case, who'd pushed me into freezing water for the amusement of his investors, who'd married me for government contracts. His phone lay on the couch beside him, screen periodically lighting up with notifications. The device that had been his constant companion, always locked, always guarded. Now it was unattended, and I knew Ethan well enough to understand this wasn't carelessness. It was arrogance. He genuinely believed I was too broken, too controlled to ever look. I eased the phone from beside his leg, heart nearly stopping when he shifted. But his breathing remained deep and regular. Bourbon had become my unexpected ally. The first hurdle, his passcode. 6 digits. Not his birthday. I'd seen him enter it often enough to know that wasn't it. Not our wedding date either. I stared at the keypad, mind racing. What would a narcissist like Ethan use? On a hunch, I tried the date Anderson Technologies went public. The moment he'd officially become wealthy rather than just privileged. The phone unlocked. My hands trembled as I navigated to his email. Hundreds of unread messages from people seeking his attention, his money, his approval. I bypassed those, searching for anything about me, about our marriage, about government contracts. The first damning email appeared in a folder labeled Project Conduit. A message from James Wilson, dated 3 weeks before our first meeting. Candidate identified. Claire Adams. DOE Marketing Consultant, Security Clearance Level 2, direct access to bid committee members. No serious relationships in the past 2 years. Father deceased, mother in Arizona. Attached background profile indicates potential vulnerabilities. Workaholic tendencies, idealistic worldview, history of long-term commitments. Recommend personal approach rather than digital introduction. My stomach twisted. They'd researched me, analyzed me, selected me like a target. The chance meeting at the networking event had been meticulously planned. I scrolled further, finding messages between Ethan and his father. The Adams woman is responding well to initial approach. Estimated timeline to proposal, 3 months. Will accelerate if possible. Engagement secured. Wedding set for 6 weeks out. Will ensure minimal attendance/documentation. DOE contacts already mentioning potential inside track on Phase 2 bidding. Keep legal team ready for contract submission window. Another message, this one from Ethan to Peter Thorne. Marriage status secured. Already leveraged connection for preliminary bid documentation. Claire has no idea her department's security protocols are being channeled through home network. Surveillance package delivering excellent results. Phase 1 complete. I sank onto the edge of the coffee table, legs suddenly unable to support me. The surveillance cameras in our home weren't just for controlling me, they were capturing my work calls, my laptop screen, using my presence to bypass security. The most recent email thread from yesterday solidified everything. Team resort meeting productive. Final bid package nearly ready. Contract announcement expected within 60 days. Claire becoming potential liability. Too many questions recently. Recommend accelerating exit timeline after bid submission. Anderson legal prepared for optimal dissolution strategy. Unfortunate mental health episodes documented via home surveillance will support favorable settlement terms. Target completion, 6 months from wedding date. Mental health episodes? I scanned further, finding video clips Ethan had compiled. Moments of me crying after his gaslighting, looking confused when he'd moved things around the apartment and blamed me for losing them, appearing anxious when he'd deliberately triggered arguments before important work calls. All edited, all stripped of context, all designed to paint me as unstable. They weren't just planning to divorce me, they were planning to destroy me. A voice note attachment caught my attention. Ethan's voice, slightly slurred. I give it 6 months. I'll get the contract and she'll be history. Dad's already lined up 3 potential replacements. Younger, more connected, less questions. The Adams experiment worked but won't be repeated. Experiment. That's all I was to him. I continued searching, fingers flying across the screen, uncovering more damning evidence. Photos of our home office with annotations showing camera placements. Screenshots of my work email captured without my knowledge. A document titled Claire Separation Strategy, with dates, actions, and assigned responsibilities. A complete plan to discredit and discard me once I'd served my purpose. My discovery shifted from shock to practical intelligence gathering. I forwarded key emails to a new anonymous account I created on the spot, being careful to delete the sent messages and empty the trash. I photographed documents using the hotel notepad as background for scale. I made mental notes of names, dates, bank accounts mentioned. While searching his photos, looking for more evidence of surveillance, I stumbled across something unexpected. A folder labeled contingency. Inside were photos of diamond jewelry, stacks of cash, and a piece of paper with alphanumeric codes I recognized immediately as cryptocurrency wallet keys. The final piece was a photo of a small safe, open to reveal its contents, with a post-it showing its combination. The location was unmistakable, the closet of our suite. Ethan had an escape plan of his own, assets hidden away from his business partners and family. As I stood there, Ethan's phone in one hand and irrefutable evidence in the other, a strangled snore erupted from his throat. He shifted, mumbling something unintelligible, then settled back into drunken oblivion. I returned his phone precisely where I'd found it, then retreated to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. Sitting on the edge of the marble tub, I processed everything I'd discovered. My husband had targeted, researched, and manipulated me. He'd married me solely to access government contracts. He'd surveilled me for business intelligence. He'd documented fake episodes to use against me. He'd already planned our divorce and my destruction. He had hidden assets in our very room. The woman who walked into that bathroom was still partly in shock, still partially trapped in Ethan's reality. The woman who emerged an hour later was something else entirely. Focused, determined, and finally seeing the complete picture of her marriage. I wasn't just Ethan's wife. I was his mark, his stepping stone, his temporary means to an end. But now, with midnight revelations burning in my mind, I would become something he never anticipated. The architect of his downfall. The hotel suite was silent except for Ethan's heavy breathing and the occasional ice settling in the bucket. 3:17 a.m., the hour of reckoning. I'd given myself until dawn to disappear. My fingers traced along the closet's back panel, finding the slight indentation exactly where Ethan's photo had shown it. With gentle pressure, the false wall clicked open, revealing a small hotel safe, not the standard one provided at check-in, but a personal unit he must have installed during his mysterious business call, our first day here. I recalled the combination from his phone. 062218. The date Anderson Technologies acquired its biggest competitor. More proof that Ethan's most intimate relationships were with his business milestones. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside lay 4 stacks of $100 bills, each bound with paper bands marked $10,000. Next to them, a velvet pouch that, when emptied onto my palm, revealed 5 loose diamonds. The ones he'd claimed his controlling grandmother refused to part with, when I'd asked about family heirlooms before our wedding. More lies. More manipulation. More evidence of the life he'd been concealing. Beneath the valuables lay a small leather notebook containing handwritten codes and passwords. I recognized the format immediately. Cryptocurrency wallet information. During our marriage, Ethan had dismissively explained crypto as too volatile, when I'd expressed interest in investing some of my savings. Meanwhile, he'd been hiding digital assets all along. My thoughts raced to the legal implications. Taking his money could be construed as theft. But was it theft when he had systematically stolen my career, my privacy, my identity? When he had married me under completely fraudulent pretenses? When he had used my government position to illegally access confidential information? I wasn't a lawyer, but I understood justice. Every dollar in that safe represented compensation for damages already inflicted. Every diamond was restitution for future earnings he planned to strip from me. The crypto was payment for privacy violations that would have held up in any court. I removed exactly half the cash, $20,000. I took 3 of the 5 diamonds, leaving him the smallest 2. I photographed the notebook pages, then returned it to the safe. He'd know I had access to his crypto, but wouldn't know which wallets I might drain. The uncertainty would torture him more than the actual loss. Moving with deliberate calm, I packed a single carry-on bag with essentials. The designer clothes he'd insisted I wear stayed behind. I wanted nothing that represented his version of me. Instead, I took only what I'd brought into the marriage. My favorite jeans, worn sweaters, the comfortable shoes he'd hidden in the back of our closet. I dressed in layers, practical clothing for traveling unnoticed. The cash I distributed throughout my bag, the diamonds secured in a hidden pocket I'd sewn into my jacket months ago during a homemaking project Ethan had mockingly praised. Even then, some part of me must have been preparing for escape. Using the hotel's business center computer, avoiding the suite's laptop with its potential tracking software, I accessed the anonymous email account I'd created. I transferred the most damning evidence to a secure cloud storage, then scheduled delayed emails to be sent to specific recipients if I didn't cancel them within 72 hours. My insurance policy if Ethan came looking for me. One email would go to his investors, revealing how he'd used illegal surveillance to access government contract information. Another to the Department of Justice outlining potential federal crimes. A third to a journalist who specialized in corporate fraud. The nuclear options I hoped I wouldn't need to deploy. Next came the cryptocurrency transfers. Using the codes I'd memorized, I accessed his wallets, nearly $500,000 in digital assets, and transferred a portion to newly created accounts. Not everything, just enough to fund my disappearance and rebuilding. I wasn't interested in his money beyond what I needed to survive his inevitable retaliation. By 4:30 a.m., my practical preparations were complete. All that remained was the symbolic goodbye. I returned to our suite one last time. Ethan hadn't moved from the couch, dead to the world in alcoholic slumber. The man who'd seemed so powerful, so controlling, now resembled nothing more than an overgrown child. Mouth slack, limbs sprawled inelegantly, completely vulnerable. I could have hurt him. In his defenseless state, I could have enacted any number of physical revenges for the humiliation at the pool, for the months of psychological abuse, for the cold calculation of using me as a business acquisition. Instead, I chose something more devastating than physical pain. I chose to haunt him with the knowledge that I had seen through him completely. His half-empty bourbon glass sat on the coffee table. I slid my wedding ring, the 3-carat, ethically sourced diamond that had sealed our fraudulent contract, from my finger. For a moment, I held it between thumb and forefinger, this symbol of ownership rather than partnership. With deliberate care, I dropped it into the amber liquid. The heavy platinum band sank to the bottom with a soft clink, the diamond catching the dim light one last time before disappearing into the bourbon he loved more than anything except himself. Next to the glass, I placed a note, not the emotional outpouring he might expect, but something that would cut far deeper. You can't control what's already gone. 7 words to replace the wedding vows that had been nothing but empty performance. I stood over him one last moment, committing to memory this final image of Ethan Anderson. Unconscious, unaware, about to wake to the consequences of his actions for perhaps the first time in his privileged life. Tomorrow he would discover the missing diamonds, the depleted crypto, and the ring in bourbon. He would realize I knew everything, and wonder exactly what evidence I'd taken and who I might share it with. His perfect plan would crumble into paranoia. His investors would question his judgment. His family would distance themselves from potential scandal. His carefully constructed image would begin to crack. And I would be gone, not destroyed as he'd planned but transformed. Not erased but reborn. The night concierge barely glanced up as I crossed the lobby, just another guest making an early departure. The taxi I'd arranged waited at the service entrance, driver discreetly professional as I requested the train station 2 towns over. As we pulled away from the resort, I didn't look back at the mountain lodge with its pristine facade hiding ugly truths. Instead, I watched the road ahead, the darkness gradually yielding to the first hints of dawn. 3 weeks later, seated in a modest apartment in a city where nobody knew me, I received the news alert. Tech CEO Ethan Anderson steps down amid federal investigation into contract bidding irregularities. The accompanying photo showed him leaving his attorney's office, face haggard, the confident smirk replaced by grim resignation. I hadn't needed to send those insurance policy emails after all. Ethan's own partners had turned on him once they realized the extent of his recklessness. The investors who'd laughed as I dripped pool water onto marble floors were now scrambling to distance themselves from his imploding reputation. I sipped my coffee, not bourbon, and smiled at the small potted plant on my windowsill, the first decoration in my new life. I had taken back my name, Claire Adams, along with my independence. The modest settlement that eventually came from Ethan's lawyers in exchange for my silence about certain aspects of his business practices had been deposited into my new account. The diamonds remained hidden away, untouched. I didn't need his blood money to rebuild. They were simply insurance against the day he might think to look for me again. Some might call it revenge, this quiet justice I'd enacted. I called it restoration, of my dignity, my agency, my future. Sometimes freedom comes in dramatic escapes, in midnight revelations, in diamonds and crypto and wedding rings dropped in bourbon. Sometimes justice is best served cold, without fanfare, in the quiet aftermath of walking away. If this story of sweet revenge had you hooked, hit like and subscribe now. My favorite moment was when Claire dropped her wedding ring into the bourbon glass with that perfect note. You can't control what's already gone. Simple yet devastating. What was your favorite moment? Tell me in the comments section. My husband skipped our 5th anniversary dinner. I sat alone at a candlelit table while he whispered sweet lies to another woman. He thought I didn't know, thought I'd cry and wait. But when he came home, he found something he never expected. A house as empty as his promises. The restaurant smelled of vanilla and fresh roses. The flickering candlelight cast golden hues across the empty chair in front of me. A bottle of expensive red wine sat between the untouched dinner plates, its deep crimson color matching the lipstick I had carefully applied an hour earlier. The table was set for 2, but only one seat was occupied. Mine. The waiter approached cautiously, his eyes shifting to the vacant chair before settling on me. Would you like me to keep the food warm a little longer, ma'am? I gave him a polite smile, though my hands tightened around the silk napkin in my lap. No, I said quietly. He'll be here soon. I lied. Justin wasn't coming. I had known that before I even made the reservation. Yet I sat there staring at my reflection in the gleaming silverware, forcing myself to relive the memories of what our marriage used to be. 5 years ago, Justin and I had vowed to stand by each other through everything. I remembered the way he had looked at me on our wedding day, his hazel eyes filled with love, his fingers trembling as he slipped the ring onto my finger. He had whispered forever like it was a promise written in the stars. And for a long time I believed him. The first 4 years of our marriage were everything I had dreamed of. We weren't the couple that needed extravagant gestures or over-the-top declarations of love. No, our love was in the small things. The way he kissed my forehead before leaving for work, the way we danced in the kitchen on lazy Sunday mornings, the way he always reached for my hand in a crowded room. We had built a life together, a life that felt whole even without children. It was a decision we had made early on. Not because we didn't love the idea of family, but because we were happy with just each other. I never felt like anything was missing. Until Justin changed. Before everything fell apart, our life had been a rhythm of love and companionship. We had our little traditions. Friday night movie marathons, late night drives to nowhere. The way he always brought me my favorite coffee on busy mornings. He made me laugh in ways no one else could, with that mischievous grin and those ridiculous impressions of my favorite TV characters. Even our fights were short-lived, ending in whispered apologies and soft kisses. We were a team unshaken by the storms that life threw at us. But what they don't tell you about love is that sometimes, it doesn't shatter with a loud crash. Sometimes, it fades so slowly that you don't even realize it's slipping through your fingers. It started with small things. Missed texts, delayed responses, moments where his attention was somewhere else. At first I convinced myself it was just stress from work. Justin had always been ambitious, always pushing himself harder than necessary. Sorry babe. Just a crazy day, he'd say, kissing my temple as he rushed past me toward his laptop. I wanted to believe that was all it was. But then our conversations started to change. They became shorter, more surface level. He stopped asking about my day. The late nights at work became more frequent. The inside jokes we used to share started fading into silence. I caught him staring at his phone more than usual, smiling at messages he never let me see. And when I reached for him in bed, his body felt colder, like he was already somewhere else. One evening as I was folding laundry, Justin walked into the room, still dressed in his office clothes. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up, and he looked distracted. I might have to travel for work next month, he said casually, tossing his keys onto the table. Something in my stomach twisted. Where? Just a conference out of state. He barely met my eyes. Justin had never traveled for work in the past 5 years. His company rarely sent employees out of town, and when they did, it was always pre-planned months in advance. I knew this because I used to be the first person he told about anything work-related. He walked into the bathroom before I could ask more. But as the sound of the shower filled the silence, I picked up his phone from the counter. It was locked. Justin never used to lock his phone. A chill ran down my spine. I put the phone back exactly where I found it, pretending I had seen nothing. But the doubt had already taken root. That night, I curled up next to Justin, searching for the warmth we once had. I traced my fingers along his arm the way I always did when I needed reassurance. He didn't pull away, but he didn't pull me closer either. "Are you happy?" I asked softly. There was a long pause. "Of course I am," he finally said, pressing a brief kiss to my forehead. But his voice lacked the certainty it once held. And that was the moment I knew. I didn't have proof. Not yet. But I didn't need it. My marriage was slipping away, and for the first time, I wasn't sure if I could hold on. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the house around me. The bedside clock glowed 12:17 a.m. Justin still wasn't home. I reached for my phone, hesitating before tapping the call button. The line rang once, twice, then went straight to voicemail. My chest tightened. I set the phone down on the nightstand and exhaled slowly, trying to ignore the weight pressing against my ribs. I told myself I wouldn't do this, wouldn't let my mind spiral every time he worked late. But this wasn't just late. This was different. Something had changed, and no matter how much I tried to deny it, I felt it deep in my bones. At first, I had convinced myself it was nothing. Work had been stressful for Justin. He had more responsibilities, more deadlines. He had always been ambitious, always pushed himself harder than necessary. But then the late nights became more frequent. The excuses more rehearsed. And the worst part? The way he spoke to me about it. Calm, collected, completely unbothered. "Babe, I told you we're on a huge project right now," he had said last week when I asked why he had been coming home past midnight. I had nodded, forcing a smile. "I just miss you, that's all." And I did. I missed him. I missed us. But he had only given me a distracted kiss on the forehead before grabbing his laptop and heading into the other room. It wasn't just the late nights. It was everything. Justin used to be warm, affectionate, present. Even on his busiest days, he always found little ways to remind me I was loved. A quick text during the day, a lingering touch as he passed by, an inside joke whispered into my ear in a crowded room. But now it was different. The kisses were still there, but they were automatic, barely more than habit. The words, "I love you," were spoken, but they felt empty, like he was reciting lines from a script. And worst of all, he had stopped seeing me. I tested it one evening. I stood in the kitchen while he sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone. I didn't say anything. I just stood there waiting for him to notice. Minutes passed. Nothing. When I finally spoke, he glanced up briefly before muttering a short response, his eyes never fully meeting mine. Something inside me cracked. The silence between us wasn't comfortable anymore. It was heavy. I tried bringing it up once. "Are we okay?" I asked softly one night as we lay in bed. Justin didn't answer immediately. He let out a long breath, rubbing his temples. "Rach, I'm just stressed, okay? Work is insane right now." I wanted to believe him. But the way he said it, the way he brushed me off so easily, made my stomach twist. Before he would have talked to me, he would have shared his stress, his frustrations, his plans for the future. Now he just existed beside me like I was another piece of furniture in the house. And that was when I knew. He wasn't just tired. He wasn't just busy. He was pulling away. I had always trusted my instincts. And right now my instincts were screaming at me. Justin was hiding something. It wasn't just his absence or the way he barely looked at me anymore. It was the small things. The way he always kept his phone face down on the table. The way he suddenly had a password on it when he never had before. The way he would smile at his screen, a soft, secretive smile he hadn't given me in months. I tried to tell myself I was overthinking, that I was just insecure. But deep down I knew better. Something was wrong. And if he wasn't going to tell me the truth, I had no choice but to find it myself. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The name on the door in front of me read, Michael Harrington, Private Investigations. I had been staring at it for 5 minutes, debating whether I was really about to do this. Hiring a private investigator felt extreme. Like something people did in movies, not in real life. Not in my life. But Justin had left me no choice. I wasn't the kind of woman who snooped through her husband's things. I wasn't the kind of wife who played games or made accusations without proof. But I also wasn't a fool. And I refused to be lied to any longer. Taking a deep breath, I opened the car door and stepped out. This was it. The moment before everything changed. Because once I walked through that door, there would be no more pretending. No more excuses. No more lies. Only the truth. And I was finally ready to face it. The cold air hit my face as I stepped out of the investigator's office, my hands gripping the folder tighter than necessary. The weight of it pressed against my chest, heavier than it should have been. Inside were pictures, timestamps, and undeniable proof of what I had already known in my heart. Justin wasn't working late. He wasn't exhausted from meetings or drowning in deadlines. He was with her. A woman I had never met. A stranger who somehow knew my husband in ways I no longer did. The images weren't just proof of an affair. They were a funeral for the marriage I thought I had. But even as I sat in my car, staring at the stack of evidence in my lap, I found myself hesitating. A small, foolish part of me still clung to something fragile and aching inside. Hope. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe. No. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. I needed to see it for myself. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I spent hours planning something I wasn't even sure I could go through with. Our 5th anniversary was only days away. 5 years of marriage. 5 years of love, laughter, and shared dreams. And now 5 years ending in betrayal. But I wouldn't let it end on his terms. So I did something reckless. Something desperate. I planned a grand anniversary dinner. One last, elaborate attempt at salvaging the remains of what we once had. I made the reservations at one of the most luxurious hotels in the city, the kind of place Justin and I used to dream about when we were younger, when we didn't have the money but had each other. I called ahead, making sure every detail was perfect. The private dining room. The candlelit table for two. The expensive wine I knew he loved. I wanted to believe that if he showed up, maybe, just maybe, there was still something worth saving. But deep down I knew better. The afternoon of our anniversary, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the bracelet Justin had given me on our first anniversary. My reflection stared back at me, a woman who looked composed, but whose heart was breaking in slow, quiet cracks. I took a deep breath, picked up my phone and called him. The phone rang twice before he answered. "Hey babe," he said, his voice smooth, practiced. "What's up?" I gripped the edge of the dresser. "Happy anniversary." There was a pause. Just a second too long. "Ah yeah. Happy anniversary," he said quickly, like it had just slipped his mind. "Listen, I meant to tell you, work's a mess today. I've got this last-minute thing I can't get out of. Can we celebrate later this week?" His voice was effortless, as if he had rehearsed the lie 100 times before saying it out loud. I swallowed hard, keeping my voice steady. "You're at the office?" "Yeah." A sharp, bitter laugh bubbled up inside me, but I pushed it down. "Okay," I whispered. "I understand." As I did understand. I understood that he had made his choice. I just hadn't realized until that moment how easy it had been for him. I arrived at the hotel early, my fingers tracing the rim of the wine glass as I sat alone in the candlelit room. The waiter had already come by twice, asking if I wanted to order. I told him I was waiting for my husband. Another lie. The restaurant was beautiful, soft music playing in the background, the warm flicker of candlelight dancing across the polished silverware. It should have been romantic. It should have been a night filled with love, laughter, and celebration. Instead, I sat alone, staring at the empty chair across from me, feeling like a ghost in my own life. And then my phone buzzed. I didn't want to look. I already knew. But my hands moved anyway, unlocking the screen, opening the message from the investigator. The first image hit me like a punch to the stomach. Justin sitting at a dimly lit bar, leaning in close to her. The second image, his hand resting on her thigh. The third, his lips grazing her ear as she laughed. And then the worst one. A video. My breath caught in my throat as I hit play. He was smiling. Smiling. The way he used to smile at me. Whispering something into her ear. Holding her hand under the table. Looking at her like she was the center of his universe. I set my phone down carefully, my hands numb. I had been right all along. And yet nothing could have prepared me for the finality of it. Justin wasn't mine anymore. Hadn't been for a long time. Strangely, I felt calm. There were no tears. No heartbreak. No gut-wrenching agony like I had expected. Just a cold, eerie stillness inside me. Because now I saw it clearly, Justin had already left me. He had just forgotten to tell me. The realization didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. It was freeing in a way. The uncertainty was gone. For the first time in months, I knew exactly what I had to do. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to scream or demand answers he would never give me. I was going to leave. And this time he would be the one coming home to an empty house. I stood up, smoothing the fabric of my dress as I placed a few bills on the table. The waiter rushed over, concern etched on his face. "Ma'am, is everything all right? Your husband." "He won't be coming," I said simply. I turned and walked out without looking back. My next steps were already mapped out in my head. I would go home, pack my things, and disappear from his life before he even had a chance to realize what had happened. I wasn't going to waste another second waiting for a man who had already replaced me. And when he finally came home, expecting a wife who would cry and forgive him, he would find something else instead. A house as empty as his promises. The heels of my shoes clicked against the marble floor as I stepped out of the restaurant and into the crisp night air. A gentle breeze brushed against my face, but I barely felt it. My hands were steady. My heartbeat was not. I had spent the last 2 hours sitting at that table, watching the candle burn down, watching the wine breathe in its glass, watching the anniversary that never was slowly collapse in front of me. I had felt every moment of it. Every second of betrayal settling into my bones like a weight I could never shake off. But now it was time. I pulled my phone out of my bag and scrolled through my messages, stopping at the last one from the private investigator. The proof was there. All of it. I took a slow breath, my thumb hovering over the screen. One final step. Then it would all be over. It had been surreal, sitting at that candlelit table, the soft hum of restaurant chatter surrounding me, the sound of wine being poured at nearby tables, laughter drifting from couples who still had something worth celebrating. But not me. I had sat there, motionless, staring at the flickering candle in front of me, letting it burn down along with any last illusion I had about my marriage. The food had arrived. Steak cooked just the way Justin liked it, a side of roasted vegetables that I had ordered without thinking. It sat untouched, the steam rising in soft curls, filling the space between me and the empty chair across the table. I had thought about reaching for the wine, about numbing the ache in my chest. But I wanted to feel this moment. I needed to. So I sat there, letting the betrayal sink in, letting the truth settle into the deepest parts of me. Letting go of the woman I had been before tonight. Because once I walked out of that restaurant, I wasn't just leaving dinner. I was leaving him. I had spent months waiting. Waiting for an explanation that never came. Waiting for Justin to see me again. Waiting for things to go back to the way they were. I had waited in our home, sitting alone on the couch, staring at the clock as the hours passed and his excuses grew thinner. I had waited for him to tell me the truth even though I already knew it. I had waited for him on our anniversary at a table set for two, hoping, against all logic, that he would show up. But I wasn't waiting anymore. I had cried my last tear for this man. And now all that was left was action. I reached into my bag, my fingers closing around the envelope I had prepared before coming here. The divorce papers. Already signed. Already final. I wasn't going to ask for explanations. I wasn't going to beg for closure. I was going to take it. I scrolled through the messages from the private investigator one last time. The images weren't blurry, weren't vague or misleading. They were undeniable. Justin's hand on her back, guiding her into the restaurant. His fingers grazing her cheek. The way he leaned in close, smiling, whispering something into her ear. Words that used to be mine. And then the video. A short clip, no more than 20 seconds, but it was enough. Enough to destroy any remaining doubt. Enough to end whatever was left of my marriage. I clicked the download button, saving the files onto my phone. A cold calm settled over me. There would be no yelling. No dramatic confrontation. No tearful goodbyes. Justin had already made his choice. Now I was making mine. I opened our text thread, the same one that had once been filled with love notes, inside jokes and midnight confessions. Now it was empty. Just a few brief, impersonal exchanges. A reminder of how far we had drifted. My hands didn't shake as I attached the photos and video. I didn't hesitate as I typed the message. Happy anniversary, Justin. Consider this my gift to you. I hit send. And then I sat back watching as the message was delivered. For a moment nothing happened. Just silence. Then 3 dots. He was typing. But I didn't stay to read whatever excuse he was scrambling to come up with. I didn't care anymore. I put my phone on silent, slipped it back into my bag and stood up. Justin could deal with his mistakes alone. The night air was crisp as I stepped out of the restaurant, the city lights stretching endlessly before me. I breathed in, letting the coldness settle inside me. I wasn't just leaving dinner. I was leaving the life I had built with him. I had made sure of it before I came here tonight. I had packed everything I needed. My clothes, my important documents, the pieces of myself that weren't tied to him. By the time Justin walked into our home tonight, expecting to explain away the undeniable, expecting to smooth talk his way out of the truth, he would find something else entirely. An empty house. No pictures on the walls. No clothes in the closet. No familiar scent of my perfume lingering in the air. Just silence. Just the hollow echo of the life he threw away. And when he called me, panicked, scrambling for an explanation, desperate for damage control, he wouldn't find me, as I was already gone. Justin pulled into the driveway, his heart pounding so hard it nearly drowned out the hum of the engine. The porch light was off and the windows were dark. Something felt off, wrong. He cut the ignition and sat still for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, trying to steady his breath. His phone was still in his lap, the last message from Rachel burning in his mind. Happy anniversary, Justin. Consider this my gift to you. And attached to it, the photos, the videos, the evidence. He had barely been able to process what he was seeing when he excused himself from the table at the restaurant, his hands shaking as he fumbled for his keys. He had whispered some pathetic excuse to the woman sitting across from him, barely hearing himself speak. Now as he stared at the front door of his house, their house, a deep, unfamiliar dread settled in his chest. He had expected Rachel to be home, waiting, angry, demanding answers. He had prepared himself for a fight, for begging, for whatever it would take to smooth things over. But he wasn't prepared for this. The door creaked open and a rush of cool air met him. The house was silent. Not the usual kind of quiet, the peaceful kind that settled after a long day. This was different. This was empty. Justin stepped inside, his shoes echoing against the hardwood floor. He reached for the light switch, flicking it on. His breath caught in his throat. The walls were bare. The console table near the door, where Rachel always kept a small vase of fresh flowers, was empty. The couch, the bookshelves, the carefully placed decorations that Rachel had picked out over the years, gone. His throat tightened as he stepped further in. The picture frames that had once lined the hallway, their wedding photos, the candid shots from vacations, the little pieces of their life together, all missing. It was as if Rachel had never lived here at all. Justin moved through the house, room by room, his heartbeat rising with every step. The bedroom door was open, the closet doors wide apart. Empty. Rachel's dresses, her shoes, the delicate jewelry box he had given her on their first anniversary, gone. The bathroom counter, once cluttered with her perfume bottles and makeup, was wiped clean. The faint scent of vanilla, the scent that had always reminded him of her, was missing. The kitchen too had been stripped. The magnets that once held grocery lists and silly notes on the fridge were no longer there. The coffee mugs she used every morning, vanished. Justin swallowed hard, stepping back, his hands gripping his phone. It wasn't just that Rachel had left. She had erased him. Erased them. Like they had never existed. His legs felt weak as he sank onto the edge of the bed, or what used to be their bed. It didn't even feel like his anymore. Rachel hadn't just packed her bags in a hurry. She hadn't left in anger, shoving things into a suitcase in a fit of rage. No. This was carefully planned. Methodical. She had made sure he knew. Made sure he understood that she wasn't coming back. His eyes flicked to the nightstand. A single white envelope sat on top of it. His fingers trembled as he reached for it. Inside were the divorce papers. Already signed. No notes. No explanations. Just an ending. Final, unforgiving ending. Justin exhaled shakily, pressing his hand to his forehead. He had never thought she would actually leave. Not like this. Not without a word. His phone slipped from his grip, landing on the bed beside him. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. He had imagined so many different scenarios on the way home. Rachel screaming at him, throwing things, demanding to know why. But this silence was worse. There was no fight. No last-minute pleas. No chances. Just emptiness. He ran a hand over his face, his chest tight. He could still hear the echo of Rachel's voice in his head, the way she used to say his name, the way she used to laugh. The house had always been full of her. Now it was just him. And he had never felt so alone. His phone buzzed. For a brief, foolish second, hope flickered inside him. He snatched it up, praying for a message, a chance, anything. But it wasn't Rachel. It was the other woman. "Hey, everything okay? You left so suddenly." Justin stared at the screen, a bitter taste in his mouth. Suddenly he felt sick. He stood abruptly, pacing the length of the room. His thoughts were a mess, tangled between regret and realization. Rachel hadn't needed to scream at him. She hadn't needed to demand answers. She had known that the moment he walked into this house, empty, lifeless, stripped of everything they had built together, he would understand. And he did. He had lost her. Not just in the way people lose each other over time. Not in a way that could be fixed with apologies or promises. No. This was permanent. This was his fault. And the worst part? Rachel wasn't coming back. Justin's breath was uneven as he stood in the middle of the empty kitchen. His pulse pounded in his ears, drowning out the silence that surrounded him. The house, their home, was nothing but a hollow shell now, stripped of life, stripped of her. His gaze landed on the only thing left behind. A single white envelope sat on the kitchen counter, perfectly centered, almost mocking in its simplicity. It didn't belong there. Nothing belonged there anymore. Justin swallowed, his throat dry as he took slow, hesitant steps forward. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the envelope, his fingers brushing against the smooth paper. A part of him wanted to leave it untouched, to pretend it wasn't real. But it was real. Just like the ache settling in his chest, just like the unmistakable void surrounding him. He exhaled sharply and tore the envelope open. The first thing he saw was the divorce papers. His name. Her name. The marriage they had built, now reduced to a few printed pages waiting for his signature. He let out a shaky breath, flipping through the documents. She had already signed them. No questions. No second chances. It was over. His eyes flickered to the second item. A USB drive, small and unassuming. But he knew what it held. The evidence. Proof of everything he had tried to hide, everything he had told himself didn't matter. A sick feeling coiled in his stomach. He didn't need to plug it in to know what was inside. The videos. The photos. The receipts of his betrayal. Rachel hadn't confronted him. She hadn't screamed or cried. She had simply collected every piece of his dishonesty and left it for him to face alone. Justin's fingers curled around the drive before he set it down next to the papers, his heart hammering against his ribs. And then he saw the final item. A small handwritten note, folded neatly. He unfolded it, his eyes scanning the familiar slant of her handwriting. "Happy anniversary. Consider this your last surprise." The words stared back at him. No anger. No emotion. No plea for an explanation. Just finality. Justin read it once. Then again. His chest tightened. It wasn't the words themselves that shattered him, it was what they meant. Rachel was gone. Not just in the sense that she had packed her things and left. She had walked away from him completely. No fights. No begging. No desperate attempts to fix what was already broken. She had let go of him like he was nothing. Like their 5 years together had meant nothing. Justin's hands clenched the paper, but there was no satisfaction in crushing it. No undoing what had already been done. Because he had done this. He had made her feel replaceable. And now she had returned the favor. Justin staggered back, pressing a hand to his forehead. His mind was racing, a tangled mess of regret, disbelief, and something far more painful, realization. She had really left. And she wasn't coming back. The truth crashed over him in waves, each one heavier than the last. Rachel had been his constant, his safe place, his home. And he had treated her like an option. He had spent the night whispering empty promises to someone else, not realizing that his wife, the woman who had stood by him, loved him, fought for him, was already making sure she wouldn't be there when he got back. He had chosen wrong. And now he was left with nothing. Justin clenched his jaw, his body rigid with the weight of his choices. He should call her. He should do something. But as he stared down at the divorce papers, at her signature etched neatly at the bottom, he knew there was nothing left to say. The silence in the house was suffocating. It pressed against him, filling every corner, every inch of space where Rachel had once been. The house had always been theirs, filled with her laughter, her warmth, the soft hum of her presence. Now it was just walls and furniture. A place stripped of meaning. He moved to the living room, his eyes scanning the bare walls, the empty shelves. His fingers hovered over the spot where their wedding picture used to hang. She had taken everything. Everything except the weight of what he had done. Justin exhaled shakily, sinking onto the couch. It was too late. She had given him chances. Given him time. And he had wasted every second of it. For the first time in his life, Justin felt the true sting of consequences. Not the kind he could fix with an apology. Not the kind he could smooth over with excuses. This was permanent. Rachel had walked away from him the same way he had walked away from their marriage, without hesitation. And now he was left with the bitter truth. She had moved on. And he would have to live with the fact that she had been right too. Justin sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the papers in front of him. At the life he had taken for granted. At the love he had lost. His phone buzzed, snapping him out of the daze. He grabbed it, his heart racing. For a split second, hope surged through him. But it wasn't Rachel. It was the other woman. "Hey, everything okay? You left so suddenly." Justin's grip tightened around the phone, his stomach twisting. She didn't matter. He had never mattered. He had risked everything for something so meaningless. No. Now he had lost the one person who had truly loved him. His chest ached as he stared at the message. Rachel wasn't going to forgive him. Rachel wasn't going to come back. Rachel had already moved on. And for the first time, Justin truly understood. This wasn't just a breakup. This was his ending.